regular meeting. Today is October 12th, 2022. The time is 7 p.m. Participants can also join this meeting via Zoom. Instructions have been provided, on the board agenda that was presented on our website. If everybody could please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I will now call the roll. Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Pacheco.
Present.
Trustee Benavides.
Present.
Trustee Lewis.
Present.
Trustee Radnovich.
Here.
Thank you. Item 4 is now the approval of the agenda. I need a motion to approve or amend the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda.
Go ahead.
I want to add item 11E, and 11E should read, discussion of procedure for trustees to insert agenda items into the agenda.
Procedure to insert.
Yes.
Danielle, our village clerk, can you comment on that? We don't have Attorney Winter here with us yet. She called and said she was going to be late.
Mayor, we can't add anything to the agenda as it's already been published within its 72 hours. However, you can discuss this topic under trustee informal. There will be no discussion or approval or vote on it, but you can definitely discuss it. And then if we would like to add that to the November agenda, we definitely can do so.
Yeah, so this is I wanted it to be in the formal minutes, but this is an example of why it's so difficult for trustees to get agenda items into the agenda. So I will discuss it in the formal part of our agenda.
Thank you. Do you want to restate your motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as is.
I need a second.
I'll second it.
I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Benavides.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Now we move to public comment period. Participants wishing to speak on topics that do not appear on the agenda will be given 3 minutes. No action can occur on these items. Danielle, please proceed with public comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and trustees, we have a few people signed up for public comment tonight. Individuals can sign up for public comment at this meeting in person or via Zoom or by telephone. So we're going to go ahead and proceed with the individuals who signed up and are in person. Mr. Peter Weinreb, if you would, please approach the podium. And you have 3 minutes. If you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Okay, yes. All right. Mayor Lopez, my name, Peter Weinreb, residence 6509 Poza Rica Court Northwest, Los Ranchos. Mayor Lopez, trustees, and neighbors, I make these remarks so that it will be part of the record. I speak as an individual. We all know traffic on Chavez Road has been a continuing concern. Residents have been complaining since last year and likely before. I approached the mayor, Administrator Simon, and Director Rubin in September to urge that the village host a community meeting to consider a pilot program to mitigate traffic on Chavez Road. They expressed interest but couldn't undertake organizing a meeting and invited my assistance. I consented. I used a database of persons who had petitioned about the Casa Rondeña Anamonte winery matter. Their survey responses for traffic mitigation preferred trying speed humps as a first choice compared to stop signs by a ratio of 4-to-1. Stop signs were a strong second choice. In a second meeting, the mayor and the staff members, joined by Public Safety Liaison Radosevich, favored giving speed humps a trial. They demonstrated the support and interest we would hope for from our village personnel. The village still needs to follow engineering and legal procedures, but our village staff showed appreciation for roadway safety and the relaxed pace of village life we value. So let the minutes and the video record include this statement of recognition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weinreb. Mr. Henry Schonard, please approach the podium. State your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Henry Schonard. I live at 6603 Elwood Northwest, a block from the site of the new village center. Attracting people to Los Ranchos to live is not just about affordable housing for any level of income. Even those with means won't want to live here unless they feel safe. At a meeting on September 13 at the Clyde Hotel, Jim Long said that it was his 10-acre property, at Guadalupe and Chavez would be a gated community. One resident of the village said that this would go against a sense of community in the village. I heard later that Jim was asked privately why he wouldn't abandon his plan to make a gated community. Crime was his response. In less than a month, we all will be voting for a new sheriff. Some of you may think that the police cannot make us safer, but gated communities can. In a month's time, we will have elected a new sheriff of Bernalillo County. I know which of the candidates I think can make us safer based on what I know of community policing and what he knows about it. I have talked with him at length about this. In a month's time, we will have a new county commissioner for the village, District 1. The candidate I have decided to vote for, if she is elected, is going to work closely with my candidate for sheriff, if he is elected. I know this because I have talked with both of them about it, if they are elected. I will continue to talk to them, keeping the village on their radar. But it's not just about safety, it's about schools. Even those with the means who can afford the safety of living in a gated community, will they send them to schools in Los Ranchos? One of our village schools, Los Ranchos Elementary, is in danger of being shut down if it cannot attract more students. Perhaps you have heard that Principal Craig Robinson's heartfelt plea for a community support for the school. In a little while, you will be hearing from Cindy Smith, coordinator for the community schools program at Los Ranchos Elementary. Please listen to her vision for the program and the school and the part that the village community can play in making the vision a reality. It's about safety and schools and about healthcare and energy and the environment, and the list goes on. But basically, it's about community. Do we have the means to deal with this crisis? I believe we do, by digging deep and finding what we already have as a community.
Excuse me, your time has expired.
I have 5 more words, 10. I believe we can, together through dialogue, create a narrative of community. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste. Si se puede. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jennifer Kiefer, please approach the podium. State your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Jennifer Kiefer, 722 Mullen Road. Thank you, Mayor, trustees, for your time. I didn't bring a formal speech, but I was asked to bring up a topic by a neighbor that trusted me to bring this to bring forward her concern regarding the definition of open space. I know we keep talking open space when we talk about the conservation pilot project. We talk about a percentage of open space. But I think there's a big difference between open space versus open space in the conservation, which is non-developed land, essentially. Because if Jim Long's proposal is gated, all 10 acres, it's not open space for the community, it's open space for the residents. So one of the things that, we really need to consider when we're looking at ordinances and we're looking at how we're gonna define such things is how do we classify open space versus undeveloped land or conservation land? So one of the observations brought up. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is, I understand that the Friends of Los Ranchos used to lobby quite a bit for the village for money in Santa Fe, along with the mayor, which, we greatly appreciate and we need. And we know this state is finally running at a surplus, so there's a lot of money to be had this year. I think, understanding the legislative process, having gone through the legislative process several times when I worked for state government, I'd like to encourage the village to hire a lobbyist. There was a conversation with Day Hoshman V. Hill, and she recommended that a lobbyist be hired as well, especially for capital outlay money. And she said, everybody hires lobbyists. It's not that expensive, and the ROI, the return on the investment, is significant. So I would just like to make the recommendation that, we want the money, we want to get as much as we can for this village, that we use a lobbyist to help us do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. David Montoya? Please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
David Montoya, and it's Pueblo Solano Northwest,
I need a street address, please.
517. Last month, our trustees voted for approving a $500,000 loan from MRGCD. And while I objected to it, I thought it was a hurried and not a good idea. And one of the things that came out of this is that it was decided to approve it, and I understood subject to a plan. Number two, I thought, after speaking with administration and mayor here, that we would have public input in this $500,000 obligation. And it just saddens me to think that, as I was told this afternoon, right now, this evening, that we don't, it's done. It's a done deal. That there's not going to be any plan that we look at. There's some secret plan out there, and it's available for us to look at. It still hasn't been shown on the internet. We didn't get any public involvement. And this is what's the problem with us. We're in a hurry to approve stuff, and this is an obligation that we all have. And instead, we go, quick, let's do it. And give it to the administration, give it to the mayor, and you guys do whatever you want. And that's not really what I understood was planned. I thought we were going to have some public involvement. $500,000 is a tremendous amount of money. Will it be sent? Well, I hope so. But it's going to be done without public involvement. And it almost seems like that there is a fear of citizen involvement. And this shouldn't be, because we're friends. You're our volunteers. We recognize that. We want to also give some of our thoughts on this obligation. The village has an obligation going way back to Warren Gray signing the agreement. The mayor asked me to bring that agreement to him, and I did. And we have an obligation on both sides of Paseo. These monies could be spent really wisely if you get a group of people that can help, instead of trying to do it, just pass it and move it forward. And I'm hoping if there's an opportunity that you can look carefully at their building, at your approval of this obligation last month, that and require a plan, that I would ask you in your time to please review that. I know I've ran out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Nancy Nangeroni. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, Nancy Nangeroni, 7315 Guadalupe Trail. Mr. Mayor and trustees, first I want to say that I want to underscore what the speakers before me have said. It seems like a no-brainer to hire a lobbyist, especially in a time of surplus funds. It's got to be worth the investment. The other thing is what David was just talking about on the water work and the $500,000 that was approved. I agree that it would be a mistake to just sort of give them the money and let them go. There's lots of concerned citizens who would be happy to volunteer their time, not to screw up the works, not to mess things up, but to be genuinely helpful. And so I support what David is saying there also. I think it would be really a smart move. And like I say, there's obviously lots of motivated citizens here, and we should tap into that energy. And lastly, what I started out to speak about tonight is, again, I want to bring us back to the barn over here. It's such a great resource, but it's not usable in midsummer, midwinter. We tried using it for the art market a couple of winters ago, and man, we froze. And it was worse than being outside, because if you're outside, at least you have the sun on you. But we were in the barn, we were in the shade, and it just didn't work at all. In the summertime, you understand, without some kind of cooling, it's just not tenable. That it could serve a lot of purposes for us, and I think it would be a really good investment for us to look into doing some cooling and some heating there, maybe some insulation. But first, of course, we need to know what we're doing, and so we need to have some answers about what the costs would be to do all that. I don't know what those things would be, and I don't know what the process is in moving from the idea to having somebody talk with somebody who can give us an estimate. I mean, I work with the TLC Plumbing and Heating. I know they could give me an estimate for that if I asked them for it, and I'd be happy to do that on a volunteer basis. But we probably have architects, we probably have contacts that we work with already, I imagine. But I just wanted to encourage that process forward. I think it's an opportunity where we can create more value for our community. So thank you very much. I know you're busy. I know the last thing you need is one more thing to have to do. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Before we approach our online participants, I'm going to ask anyone in the audience who did not have an opportunity to sign up for public comment, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Gordine McKenzie, 7315 Guadalupe Trail, Northwest. Mayor, trustees, administrators, friends, and neighbors. I wanted to also support hiring a lobbyist and also giving careful consideration for how we spend our village funds. I want to also support what Nancy said in terms of the barn and wonder if we might defer some of the repairs on the old village offices that are being talked about turned into a pickle court. Could those funds be channeled into taking care of the barn? I also think it's a great community resource. But what I really wanted to talk about is to ask you, before you grant a franchise to the Public Service Company of New Mexico to construct, maintain, and operate electric facilities, infrastructure in the public right-of-way within the village, I was wondering if there was a way that you could leverage that PNM could bury their power poles underground. It would provide us with a wider road. It would beautify 4th Street. As we know, power poles can be ugly and not only cause safety issues for bicyclists, pedestrians, and also balloons, but it could help with some of the parking that is being proposed. So I would ask you to consider deferring the franchise agreement to get PNM to work with us to bury the electric poles underground. Now, of course, that will bring an expense, and I would also support getting a lobbyist to see if we could get some money from the legislature, but it would certainly beautify and make a safer place on 4th Street. Thank you very much. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you. Kiko, I'm going to turn it over to you to see if there's anybody participating online who wish to speak under public comment on items not listed on the agenda.
I have one user stand by while I let them in. Amy Legant, I'm trying to put you into the meeting. Can you allow that to happen?
Okay.
Amy, go ahead.
Yes. I don't need, this is a technical question. I don't need to have the video on, right?
No, we can, yes, you do.
Okay.
I apologize.
And you can hear me now? Okay. Okay, are you ready for me to start?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Amy Legant. I live at 511 Charles Place, Northwest, Los Ranchos. Mayor and Board of Trustee members, I noticed that the community school support person from Los Ranchos Elementary School is on the agenda for tonight's meeting. I also recall that the principal from Los Ranchos provided a presentation earlier on. As a former principal of Alvarado Elementary School, I'm wondering, do the mayor and trustees know that all of the apartments in the Palindrome project, as well as the apartments on Willow and 4th Street Northwest, are all in the Alvarado Elementary School's attendance area, not Los Ranchos Elementary School attendance area. I wondered if the mayor or anyone from the village has reached out to the principal at Alvarado. One other detail that I anticipate could come up is the following. Families in the apartments that are proposed to be built on 4th Street that are currently in Alvarado's attendance area, families there could request a transfer to Los Ranchos Elementary School. But if they did so, they would need to understand that they would be responsible to provide their own transportation to and from Los Ranchos, as school bus service only extends to each school's designated attendance area. So I'm concerned because we have 200 plus apartments as well as the other apartments at Willow and 4th Street that are being proposed, and one has already been approved. Perhaps it would be a good idea to touch base with the principal at Alvarado Elementary School to bring him into this process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and trustees, that's the end of public comment. We'll go ahead and turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 6 now is approval of minutes. We're going to approve all 3 sets of minutes, September the 8th, 2022 working session, the minutes from September the 14th, 2022 regular meeting, and the minutes from the September 28th, 2022 special meeting.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I was not present for the meeting, the special meeting on September 28th,
You can recuse yourself.
just from that?
Yes.
Or from the whole vote?
It's really up to you. Danielle, isn't that correct?
Trustee Pacheco can approve the minutes as she read them in the packet.
Okay.
If she chooses to do so. She does not have to, but you can do so by reading the minutes, and I'm sure you probably listened to the video as well.
Then you have your answer. Okay. I need a motion to approve all 3 sets of minutes.
I'll make the motion to approve all sets of the minutes.
I need a second.
I'll second it.
I'm going to call for the question. Call for the roll call vote. Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Benavides.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously. Item 7 is now presentations. 7A, Cindy Smith, Community School Coordinator, Los Ranchos Elementary. What is the purpose of a community school? Please come forward, Cindy.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me all right? Again, my name is Cindy Smith. I am the Community School Coordinator for Los Ranchos Elementary. This is the first year for the Community School Initiative to be implemented at Los Ranchos, and we are all very excited about the possibilities. The Community School Strategy is a school improvement strategy. At a community school, improvement occurs through collaborative practices, capacity building, and diverse stakeholder engagement. Students, and really all of us, are always scanning to ask first, am I safe? And then, am I loved? And then they think, I am ready to learn. Community schools, in collaboration with all of their partners, create the spaces where students feel safe and cared for, which then creates the conditions for learning. It's equally important to remember that the languages and cultures that our students bring to their education are assets for their own learning and are important contributions to learning communities. The next, go back one, I'm sorry. Go back one, thank you. There's a common misconception that community schools provide social service type or wraparound services, and then student achievement is impacted. In reality, it is the process of being in community that impacts student achievement. The social service aspect of community schools is important as it addresses the most basic needs of students and families shown here in the pyramid. We know that students and families fall all along this pyramid. According to a research study conducted in 2017, there are 4 pillars that make up the community school framework. These pillars are are all part of the system that is a community school. All pillars need to be working together in order to create the conditions necessary for students to thrive. And it takes multiple, diverse stakeholders, including parents, educators, faith-based, and community organizations to make this happen. Next slide, please. That's why in a community school, all members of the community are empowered to have a voice in decision-making. What you see here are some suggestions of the diverse groups of stakeholders whose voices should be engaged in making decisions that will lead to create the conditions for children to thrive. Trust is developed and leadership capacity is built through the collaborative leadership structure of the Community School Council. Community partners operating within the programmatic pillars of active family and community engagement, integrated student supports, and expanded learning time and opportunities can provide a lot of support to teaching and learning school goals. For example, let's say our school has a 90-day plan goal to increase math proficiency in 3rd through 5th grade by, let's say, 15%. In the Community School Council, all of these stakeholders would have a part to play in making that happen. How could the out-of-school time provider support to increase the math proficiency? How could family members help? Again, by working together, we can certainly do our best to meet that goal. Ultimately, the next slide, please. Ultimately, the purpose of a community school is to move toward equity and justice. In the first picture, we see what happens in an unequal system. Only some children have access to opportunities, so we try to create a more equal system for all children. Next slide, please. We at Los Ranchos are now part of the ABC network of community schools. As you can see, there are 56 community schools in APS and 10 charter schools within Bernalillo County. The ABC network supports them all. The ABC Executive Director identifies funding support so that community schools can each have a coordinator. The ABC staff offers onboarding and training for community school coordinators at all stages of development. They create the tools and resources to help us understand our job, which is, again, to facilitate partnerships that will create an equitable and just system within our community school. They also offer grant writing support. We also have the opportunity to participate in such ABC signature programs as Homework Diner, Book Studies, the Coordinator Legal Academy, and the Out of School Time Grant. We also partner with our teachers, counselors, and family liaisons to provide direct links to or assist our families and community members with the resources that are needed. Next slide, please. But what exactly is ABC? ABC stands for Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Community School Partnership. It was formed by a joint powers agreement in 2007. The agreement is between Albuquerque Public Schools, Bernalillo County, and the city of Albuquerque. 3 members from each of these entities include school board members, county commissioners, and city councilors sit on the ABC board. The board also includes the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions, the United Way, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and the Albuquerque Teachers Federation, and UNM. As you can imagine, this is a very important board and powerful, and they are able to engage the resources of their organizations to support the growth and development of community schools. Next slide, please. And I'm really hoping the link for this works. If you can press on the arrow, let's see if we can get the short video to play. It won't play? Well, that's too bad. Long story short, it must have been bad hair day at the school. The quote from the child at the very end sums it up. The key thing about a community school is it's where you learn together, have fun together, and do things together. And I couldn't have said that better myself. A community school is a place where there is a culture of caring, where the students know that adults, which includes teachers, administrators, family members, and community partners, care for them as people and about their success, not only in school, but in life. Next slide, please. These are some of our current and some of our current projects and those in the planning stages. For example, we have a very strong partnership with Desert Springs Church and Shine. In our Genius Hour, which is the last hour of our extended day, we're working with Josh Halloran already from the Agricultural Center. He's going to be bringing in some additional activities and resources to share with the group that is dedicated to campus beautification. And then we've also just recently had our first family reading night, and about half of our students were there, and they brought their moms and dads. Everyone was in their pajamas and had a wonderful night of reading. It was really great. For more information, I can be contacted at 505-898-0794 or at cindy.smith@aps.edu. We will be holding our first Community School Council meeting on Thursday, October 20th at 3 p.m. in room West 10. And we would love to have your representation there, and anyone from the audience tonight is welcome to attend as well. Thank you very much.
Cindy, are you available for questions?
Yes, sir.
I have one. On one of your slides, you show the ABC Community School Network, and Zone 3 has 3 schools, Duranis Elementary, Garfield Middle School, and Los Ranchos. Is it the school's choice, or is it APS administration that decides what school can be a community school?
Well, that's an excellent question, and it really begins with the school itself.
Okay.
They do apply to become a community school. And again, based on the funding that's available through the ABC board and APS, that's basically how they're selected. But a school just isn't thrust upon, here's a community school, whether you want it or not.
Right.
It already takes the vision and the dedication to become a community school to get that first step.
Okay. Do the trustees, individual trustees, have a question for Ms. Smith?
I do have one. I don't think you said it anywhere here, Cindy, but how long has Los Ranchos been a part of the community school, or is it just this year?
This is just our very first year, and we're very excited and I'm very excited as a community school coordinator to be there. Previously, I took last year off on leave, but prior to that, I was the first community school coordinator at Adobe Acres Elementary for 3 years. And I was able to return back to APS this year, wanted to continue the community school work that I feel is very valuable and important, and was assigned to Los Ranchos. And I'm finding everyone there very welcoming and very supportive.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. Go ahead, sir. Yeah.
Cindy, the schools apply and then they get on this list?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it has to be something that comes from the school?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so on the slide labeled Opportunities and Partners, I see you have listed Los Ranchos Nature Center, Agriculture?
Yes, sir.
I can't, the slide was cut off, so I can't read the whole thing. What would you like to do with them? How do you envision that partnership going?
Well, again, as I reach out to partners and different collaborators, I talk about the different programs we're having at the school and what we're planning for. And actually, Josh reached out to me. It was my very first day, and he was already on my list to call, and I got his call first. And we talked a little bit about the Community School Initiative and how with our Genius Hour, that would probably be the very best fit for Josh in order to work with students and a classroom specifically and support their goal for campus beautification. So he's going to be bringing in a variety of activities to work with for the students and some additional resources as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, George?
Just one. Excuse me. Really good job. I think that's great. And yay, Josh. I think that's awesome. Could you repeat it? This is a very simple question. Could you repeat the time and the
for a community school council? Yes, sir. Again, it's Thursday, October 20th at 3 p.m. And my room is in the West Hallway or West 10. And that's at Los Ranchos? At Los Ranchos, yes, sir. And I'd love to see everyone there.
Thank you very much for a great presentation.
Thank you, sir. Oh.
Absolutely. Please do.
Yes, ma'am.
Cindy, out of all the which one has been on there the longest?
Well, I would probably, I'm not familiar. I would say I know that Duranus, I'm just trying to look here. Not sure when Garfield's been
How
a,
long has this program been in play?
I'm sorry. Can you
How long has this community program with the APS schools, how long has it been in play?
It started back in 2007 with 9 schools, and it's grown now to 66.
Okay, and then my next question to you is, out of those schools that have been in this community schooling, how many have raised their academic scores? Because we rank so low on the totem pole.
Well, again, as a community school partner, and like I said earlier in the presentation, for example, I know one thing or one aspect that we'll be addressing with Los Ranchos in particular is attendance. That will be that's part of, how do we improve the attendance at Los Ranchos? How do we work with parents and families in order to improve that?
My question to you, I'm sorry if I didn't state it correctly. The schools that have been in this community group the longest, have their academic scores come up?
Well, ma'am, I can speak to my experience at Adobe and the 3 years there. And again, by being able to create the partnership, the feeling of caring, the feeling that they were valued and that they were needed to be at the school, and supporting those initiatives did improve attendance at Adobe. And again, when you're at school every day, you're learning every day. So again, ideally, I believe we did show some growth with the iReady testing.
Okay, thank you for answering my question.
You bet.
Mayor, I have one more.
Go right ahead, George.
Thank you, Mayor. What is the area that you draw from at Los Ranchos Elementary?
I wish I had that information. I'm, like I said, just new on the job, but I will be going and doing what we call some asset mapping and meeting with some local other businesses and some other members to share with them the goal of the community school and what we hope to accomplish this year.
The reason I ask is, we've been told by the principal that the school population's decreasing. I don't know what Alvarado is doing or Taylor is doing, but it makes me wonder what the draw is for Los Ranchos versus those other 2 schools.
Yeah, and I think that
Tyler to Ortega, and then I'm just looking it up right now, and it looks like the railroad tracks to Rio Grande, to the river, I'm sorry.
Cindy, I would like to offer a comment. Am I correct in saying that Los Ranchos Elementary is a magnet school for autism, for autistic children? Is that correct?
I would have to verify that, but I know that it's quite possible that it is.
I believe it is, because the principal has told me. And because of that, they draw autistic students from a much larger area than just the area where the kids can actually come from. I've been told that.
Okay. And I know that part of our work as a council and part of our work as a school is to, again, be doing more advertising. For example, we're going to be putting articles in the village newsletter, highlighting the accomplishments that our students and staff are making, and ideally helping to change maybe some misunderstandings or misideas about the Los Ranchos Elementary School.
So I have 2 hands that are raised. I'm going to allow just 2 more questions. Linda, you go first, and then I'll let you speak. What's your question?
Very quick question. I was trying to read your slides. How much are you involved with music and arts type programs for this community or art?
Well, again, that would be, as I'm just beginning, that would be definitely an interest for me to make some outreach to and bring that to our school as well. Thank you.
Go ahead, sir. Or ma'am, I'm sorry.
Thank you for doing this work, great work. Where could we find more information? Is there a website where we can learn more about the
I'm in the process of developing a page for our school, but I believe if you would just look up, and I can get that information for you, but I believe that abccommunityschool.com would be a reference, or .org would be a place to go.
All right, we're going to move on to the next item. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
All right. Wonderful job. Great job. Item 8 is departmental reports. The departmental reports are included in the packet and reflect all the activities listed. Ms. Rinaldi would like to provide her report update to the trustees. Ms. Rinaldi, would you please come to the podium at this time?
Good evening, Mayor, trustees. Just going to give you the highlights since the last Board of Trustees meeting. I am very happy to report that the work on Schulte is complete. Change order has been fulfilled. There was one issue with one stone in one driveway that was driven across that is going to be repaired, probably already has been by Bradbury, but we are complete. So we have the 3 outstanding change orders to be billed by Bradbury. We are scheduling a punch list walkthrough between ourselves and Bradbury the first week of November, to be followed very shortly thereafter by NMDOT's final walkthrough. So we can actually see the end of the road here. They've done a very good job on the work that was complete, and it's not noticeable, as was what we wanted it to be, just to look like it's always been there. So we're very pleased with that. And they made some repairs to some damages of curbing that was not a fault of their own, but things that have occurred in the warranty period that they fixed for us. So that's phase 1. And on phase 2, I have one outstanding invoice from BHI on the 30% design for phase 1. And we're processing those final invoices to prepare for an audit by NMDOT. All of these projects are funded by different sources. This is why they're spelled out as 30% design, funded by TPF, 100% design. That's why they're broken down that way in my report. So I'm sorry for any need for clarification on that, but what's closing out is the 30% design for the alternative we've selected to move forward to 100% design. And final engineering, phase 1, in our negotiations with BHI for 100% design, we, in good faith, solicited a proposal from them, and we secured the funding in the amount of that proposal, and we were successful in being funded 100%, and they have requested a price increase on us, a significant price increase. So we are looking at our options. We have asked them to provide a proposal. We don't have adequate funding for the amount of requests that they've made for this design. We'd have to tap into our construction money. And one thing that's the problem with the construction money is we'd have to have a change of scope on some of those sources. We were so confident in the proposal they gave us, because that's what they gave us, that we secured that funding, and all other funding that we've secured has been identified as construction. So we're looking at all our options. We're looking at reducing the 100% design scope to the first phase, and the first phase alone. And there's an advantage to that, and we've discussed this before, in that if you design as you have funding to build and things change on the ground in the subsequent phases, you're better able to design for that. So we're looking at that. We are meeting with NMDOT next week to discuss options of design build and any other potential that we may have for gap financing for 100% design. So I will keep you informed about that. That's happening next week. Also on your agenda tonight, you will be hopefully passing the resolution, adopting the resolution that allows us to accept what we've been awarded in $1.5 million funding in this round of transportation funds. We had a very successful application. That's on the agenda tonight. Agri-Nature Center, we had our responses to the RFQ received on Friday. Unfortunately, as we anticipated, the quote received exceeded the engineer's estimate, And in addition to exceeding the engineer's estimate, it exceeds, obviously, what we are funded for. So Knight CV of Insight Work, our overall architect on that project, and I will be meeting with Anchor Built, who is the vendor who submitted a quote, to see if we can value engineering based on the amount of funding we have available. And our goal is to do curb, gutter, and alignment to at least have the backbone of the roadway so that the Agri-Nature Center and all of the visioning and all of the projects that are in works there that have nothing to do with the roadway, they can proceed with those because you now know where the roadway is. So we're doing that on Tuesday as well. So I will keep you informed of that. We also have, if that's not a possibility, we have some additional procurement opportunities that Danielle and I have been exploring for soliciting from other vendors. So we'll see, we're moving forward with that. And Chavez Road, still waiting for our funding agreement on that project so that we can issue an RFP on that. They asked for a schedule, a preliminary engineering and right-of-way survey schedule, and the first task that I identified was an RFP and award for design services to take place in November. So they knew that was on the schedule, but they have yet to send us the paperwork we need. So that schedule may adjust, and I'll provide you with a new schedule accordingly. And completed the RFP for transportation analysis for your consideration this evening. That is also later on the agenda. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'm going to ask the question this way. I'm going to have each trustee, if they want to ask the question. So let's start with Trustee Pacheco. Do you have any questions for Maria?
Okay, so just for Maria, or are we going to go down the whole?
No, just for Maria
Okay.
at this time, yeah.
Okay. I think she answered the majority of my questions.
Okay, Trustee Benavides?
Yes, I do have some questions. So I get confused when we start talking about the phases, okay? So, you know, on page, let's see, on page 58, we talk about phases 2A through 2C, and that encompasses Pueblo Solano to the village limits. So sometimes the phases describe sections of the project, and sometimes it describes where you are in the project. For example, are you at the 30% design, 100% design, are you doing construction, that kind of stuff, right? That's why it gets so confusing. So the portion that we completed, let's start with that. That is phase?
Phase 1.
That's phase 1, okay. So now we're in, so phase 2A, you spell that out. That's Pueblo Solano to Ranchitos.
Correct.
B is what?
Ranchitos to either side of the Paseo del Norte Bridge, depending on participation of NMDOT.
Okay. And then C is from there to the limits. Okay.
Correct.
So thank you for that. Is there another question? Okay, let's see. On page 59, Village Center Project. Okay, the second bullet, the village has executed a subdivision improvement agreement, and we have received the infrastructure bond in the amount of, let's see, 1.9 million approximately, right? When did the village agree to do this? What was the time period?
This, Mayor, Trustee Benavides, I believe that we accepted this in August. Is that correct, Dan? That we approved the infrastructure bond? Yes.
Okay.
I believe it was in August.
Mayor, Trustee Benavides, I believe that is true. It was in the last couple months.
Okay. Can you recap what that 1.9 million was for?
Certainly.
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Actually, may I? I can just tell you really quickly that it guarantees that they will put in all of the utilities that are the backbone of the project, the gas, the electric, the water, the sewer, some roadway, curb and gutter, all of those hard infrastructure costs that would otherwise be a burden on the village if they were not provided by the developer. So the bond essentially says if they fail to do that, we have that money to make it whole should they default. Nan, do I have that correct? No, so it is a surety for all of the hard infrastructure that would otherwise fall to the village to provide if it wasn't provided by the developer. It is the water, the sewer, but this is all private. It's not public. We have no maintenance agreement with it. It's sidewalks, curb and gutter, roadways, water, gas, electricity, anything that is necessary infrastructure to provide for that development.
So Palindrome should service that debt?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. This is just, if they should default on any part of the agreement, it goes away. We have this money to complete that work.
And then we service the debt?
No,
We don't service any debt.
Trustee Benavides, this is money in our hand.
But you're saying if they were to default?
Right, then when it's complete,
Yeah.
then the money is returned to them. It is our insurance that this infrastructure will be built.
Okay.
Should it not be built and it falls to us to provide it, we have the money for that.
Okay. Okay. But a bond that needs to be repaid? No.
Not by us.
Okay.
No.
So if they default, then who repays it?
So we have the money if we so choose to move forward with the project or with a new developer. That money exists for the purpose of that infrastructure.
Okay, it's insured. Oh, I see.
Yes.
Okay, let's see, that was.
Right, George?
That was the last question I had for you, so thank you.
Certainly.
Okay, Trustee Lewis.
Thank you. Maria, could you touch on this roadway improvement project and the bar that's coming up later in our meeting? Could you explain that a little bit fuller to us?
Yes. So when we submit an application to NMDOT, the requirement is that we have solicited estimates for the work. And these are all crack seal. I'm not sure, I don't think there's any striping this year. But it also includes major roadway excavations on Tyler. And so when you're awarded the money within a certain period of time after signing the agreement, you must assure that the scope remains the same according to now revised estimates and adjust the scope accordingly, whether the estimates come in lower and you might be able to add something to the scope, or in this case, if the estimates come in higher. NMDOT cannot make up any difference in those estimates. So it is the grantee who must either commit additional funds to hold that scope in place or to reduce that scope in accordance to what the cost is going to be. And in discussions with the administration and staff, the decision was to put this forward to you to ask for that additional money to maintain the scope as submitted to NMDOT and complete all of the roads in that scope.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Any more?
I have no more questions.
Okay, Trustee Radnovich.
I just have a couple, Mayor and Maria. It's actually more of a comment than a question. I hope we don't have to go to a design-build approach for 4th Street, because I've been through many of those myself, and design-build is, how should I put it? It's more expensive typically than a design bid build. It's also up to the contractor typically to make changes as they go, and those changes aren't always in our control. So I'd just a comment. I'd hope we don't have to go to a design build approach.
Mayor, Trustee Radnovich, it's our hope as well we're just looking at all of our options, but NMDOT design build is very specific. We still retain a huge, I mean, it's our project. We're the lead agency. And what we're looking for are cost savings. We certainly wouldn't do anything that exceeds the amount of funding we have available, because we're looking at this as a potential option for cost savings, which has typically been the result of NMDOT, their own projects. So these are all the things we would like to flesh out before we make a decision.
Yeah, like I said, it's just a comment,
Thank
not a
you.
question. And I think you're doing a great job. Why, this leads to another question.
Sure, go ahead.
We released RFPs for on-call services for engineers, landscape architects, and I believe surveyors. I can't remember all of them.
It wasn't a surveyor, it was.
Was it architect?
It was architect.
Architect, a few years back. So that would preclude us from going to another engineer at this point, or would it?
No, it would
Mayor,
not. In my opinion, it would
well,
not. And
Mayor,
maybe Danielle can weigh in on this. She's also a procurement officer.
I can answer
But
this,
go ahead.
Mayor. Trustee, our obligation with our engineer at this point, task order was issued for completion of 30% design. We have no further obligation to that engineer, nor do we have to use an engineer on retainer. We could essentially RFP all over again. I mean, we got to take, there's so many moving parts at this point in time, but we're looking at every possible solution. But I mean, honestly, I would just say that we are looking at concentrating on phase 2A, which is Pueblo Solano to Ranchitos, getting it designed, getting it built, and then as funding, we have some out years funding programmed in as that becomes available, subsequent phases in the same manner or in a completely different manner.
Okay, great, thanks, Maria.
Certainly.
One last comment. One way that we can value engineer that roadway that goes up to the Agri-Nature Center is not to have curb and gutter. It also doesn't, it looks less rural than a road that has borrow ditches on the side. And so I think that would be a really good option for the Agri-Nature Center.
Mayor, Trustee Radnovich, point well taken. When I say curb and gutter, I simply meant the alignment of what is its estate or rural agricultural curb. It's not your typical subdivision curb.
I get it. It's what's called an estate curb, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's still a curb, though.
Yes.
Thank you. We're going to move on. If the governing body has questions on any of the remaining staff reports, we will have each trustee ask all of their questions before we move to the next trustee. Trustee Pacheco.
Is there any public comment?
No. The public comment period is over. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I just wanted to congratulate you on being reelected to the position with the Municipal League. So congratulations to you on that. Let's see, moving on to Administrator Simon's report. With regard to the overgrown trees on the Del Norte property, are we moving forward with that?
Mayor, Trustee Pacheco, yes, we are. And as a matter of fact, we just learned through our meeting with the Conservancy District yesterday that we can apply some of the funding for the infrastructure to the trimming of the trees, because it's all part of a more efficient irrigation system at the property.
And how soon will that be started? I mean, like immediately, or?
We hope that the mayor can sign the agreement on Friday and we'll get going.
Great. Let's see, this is on the Agri-Nature Center. I was just kind of curious, and I don't know if this is a Maria question or your question, but on the redesigning the plaza area in front of the classroom, what's the purpose of that?
Mayor and Trustee Pacheco, trustees, this is a really exciting project. We did get legislative appropriation funding to look at an outdoor classroom and plaza in front of for the outside area between the hops field and the warehouse. We have been working with one of our on-call contractors, Maura Reardon, to give us a design for a relocated area for the raised beds, which will be dislocated once we get the roadway in, as well as some shade, some seating, what the outdoor classroom would look like, what kind of plumbing would be needed, how we can have cooking demonstrations from the field to the table, and just walking pathways and places for people to sit, because people do use that area to walk through from the fields, from the Los Poblanos open space, all the way out to Rio Grande.
Okay, and maybe I just misunderstood the way it was worded. I thought we were like redesigning something there. It really is just a redesign, not redesigning.
Mayor, Trustee Pacheco, I'm not sure how I wrote it, but we are pulling the parking completely out of that area. So there will be no parking there. So we're trying to utilize that space, repurpose that space.
Okay, thank you. One last question for you. With regard to the Business and Economic Advisory Committee, so I think it was the last meeting I had brought up, are we moving forward with some of the action items that were brought about? Are those moving forward?
Yes, thanks for the question, Mayor, Trustee Pacheco. We are going to be meeting again on October 25th, and I hope you can attend again, and the other members of the committee can attend. And we're going to really focus in on what's achievable and what did people hear from you all, from the administration, what are the priorities and what can we take on as a next step.
Very good, thank you. Let's see. That's all I have for Administrator Simon. I do just have a question for Maida. And I read through the report, but I'm looking more at the permits, the building permits. There's a big number on there, the 2.8 million on the valuation for residential construction. Just kind of curious, are we just getting bombarded with some home building permits, or where does that lie?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Mayor and Trustee Pacheco. So it's slipping my mind right now what that was about, but there was, it was for a larger project, I believe, was the bulk of it.
And if I could jump in, I believe that was Village Center.
Village Center,
That
okay.
sounds correct, yes.
Great, thank you. That's all my questions, Mayor.
Okay. Trustee Benavides, you're next.
Yes, let's see. Okay, this is for Ann Simon's report. A follow-up about the tree trimming and $40K to be used for that. I don't have an issue with that, but if I look at the Del Norte open space, there must be several hundred trees. So there must have been a process put in place to identify those trees that would need trimming, that would enable agricultural activities to go on. Is that correct?
That's correct. And Mayor, Trustee Benavides, we had several firms come out, take a look. Some of the figures were astronomical, some were more in the range of what we were looking for. And then both our facilities manager, Keen Heinzelman, and our agri-program manager, Joshua Halloran, went out with the Conservancy District, identified the trees that would be most beneficial to address before we started the infrastructure project, and that's where we landed.
Oh, so it was done to benefit the irrigation infrastructure, or
Yes.
for the particular crops that might need to be grown?
No, no, Mayor Lopez, and you might be able to jump in here, but Trustee Benavides, the issue really is mostly just to get the equipment in and out of there so that when we go in with equipment to install the infrastructure, the piping, that, you know, there's no conflict.
There was an obstruction of some sort.
Exactly.
Okay.
The other thing is that shade, while it's not so great for agriculture, it provides, you know, shade for the walking trail. As I'm sure Mr. Montoya can attest, it's a beautiful walking trail, and it does shade that alfalfa field, but it provides service.
Okay, thank you for that, yeah. Let's see, next question would be on page 54. And this is Josh's report. Maybe somebody else can answer on his behalf. Well, actually, maybe it's not as much of a question anyway. So I like seeing workshops here because I want to see how the Agri-Nature Center benefits the farming community at large. And when I see these sort of things, you know, it makes me feel like they're reaching out into the community. So one thing that I would like to see is that I think some of the farmers, small farmers, would like to see is what sort of things they can do that could turn a profit, right? And maybe this home mushroom growing is one of those things, I would assume to be. But there might be other things out there where somebody that has 1 acre, 2 acres, what could they do with their property so that they could actually make a little money at it, you know?
I wish Josh were here.
Yeah, I can
because I know he'd
comment
be
on
able
that.
to answer that question
Sure, and
directly.
I can take a stab at Mayor Lopez and Trustee Benavides. We do set out the workshop schedule at the beginning of each season, and they're in the process of putting their winter schedule together, so I'm sure they would love the input. The next Agriculture Committee is next week, I believe, on Wednesday at 3 o'clock. And they have reached out and they would love to have participation from trustees and always open to suggestions. The workshops have been about every other Thursday evening.
Yeah, and I hope they touch on the economics of doing a particular project, right? If you want to do a greenhouse to grow such and such, you know, what are examples of things that have worked, right? So, okay, that's on that report. Let's see, page, sorry, I think this one is for Director Rubin. Yes, okay. So on page 55, you have, towards the bottom, second bullet, met with representative from Hamari. I don't really know what that is. The village short-term rental data collector to be brought up to speed on their role on the process of short-term rental regulation. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure, thank you for the question, Mayor Lopez and Trustee Benavides. So the village has an arrangement with a firm who collects data on short-term rentals within the village. Because if you're not enforcing or regulating, you know, it's strange to bring people through the process of permitting if we're not checking up on it, right? So, so they provide us data, and we see where there are places where people do not have a permit, but they are operating a short-term rental on a platform like Airbnb or VRBO, and we try to reach out to bring them into compliance and let them know that they do need a permit to operate.
So it's for compliance reasons then?
Correct.
Okay, I got it. Okay, let's see, so that's that question. Let's see, page 57, which is, oh, I think we already covered that, so thank you. Let's see. So that is it. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Lewis, your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's see here. I'm sorry Henry left. I thought that was quite an impressive picture of him roping, so I wanted to give him a hard time. I think that maybe that's why he left. I don't know.
Could be.
Let's see. My first questions are for Maida. In talking about the pop-up market, and it talks about permits for that market, can you tell us so that the public's aware of what the permit process is to participate in that market?
Sure. So my participation in that permitting process is a little new, but Michelle typically handles those. Applicants come in and make sure they are registered to do business in the village, and they do get a permit to participate in these markets. So I can provide you more information offline.
I was curious what the process is for somebody that's curious or interested in being in that market.
Sure, and I can provide that in more detail.
Okay. My next question also is for you, Maida, and that is, we've had a lot of comments about code violations in the village. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about what Thomas is finding out there, what he is writing citations for or writing people up for, just an idea of what he seems to be encountering, or if there's something really predominant, or is it across the board?
Sure, thank you very much for the question. So far, I have not been able to identify a trend in particular issues or for code enforcement. It's been all over the place. But, typically the process is, of course, trying to bring everyone into compliance when there is an issue identified. So Thomas will go and respond to the inquiry and see what the situation may be, try to talk to that person if they're available to tell them how to bring their property into compliance, if it's an inoperable vehicle or what have you. And there's follow-up, and if need be, the village attempts to give that person a decent amount of time to respond to that. We are not trying to punish anybody, but more to help them come into compliance. So it's a back and forth process, and he's always out engaging in the community.
Okay, thank you. Those are questions we covered with Maria. I have no further questions.
Trustee Radnovich.
I have a few, Mayor. But first, I just wanted to, after reading all of the reports this month, it just struck me how hard everybody works. And I really just wanted to thank all of you for just the work you do, because it's just pretty amazing. And I just think you're doing a great job, so.
George, let me offer this comment that this village has a massive workload. It's beyond what I have ever seen in my 30 years of being an elected official, honestly.
Yeah, I believe
it's
it.
Massive.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can see that from the 300-page reports we get sometimes to read. So, but you guys are doing great. So first, I didn't have anything for the mayor. That's already been talked about. The Sign Language Academy, and we met with the Sign Language Academy to begin to identify how to make a trolley coffee a reality. Staff are developing a memorandum of understanding. Can you explain what we're doing with the Sign Language Academy a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mayor and Trustee Radnovich. As many of you know, we have this old trolley that's been sitting in our warehouse for quite some time. It is wonderful. Everyone loves it. It's beautiful. It's really expensive to run. It requires a commercial driver's license. It is constantly in need of repair.
So I couldn't buy it.
We have been trying to figure out what to do with this since I got here 2.5 years ago. We were approached by the American Sign Language Academy and YCC, which is out at the Agri-Nature Center often with crews of students volunteering. They approached us about using that as a place to have a sort of a workforce training center. It would be a coffee shop, but it would also be a place where older high school students, and in this case, disabled students, would be able to learn skills on how to operate a restaurant, operate a food truck, and then provide a service to our residents. I will say also, I know that some of our business committee members are in the audience, and this was also a recommendation that came up in the business committee, that we use the opportunity with food trucks to be a learning opportunity. And so we sort of thought this was a win-win.
It is. That's great. Really good. And I also liked Henry's photo in that. For Josh's, I just wanted to, and he's not here obviously, but I just wanted to thank him for the work he's doing with that, especially that the Sign Language Academy. I have a really good knowledge of them. Maida, I just had a couple of, what's an STR regulation? I didn't recognize that.
Apologies, I spelled it out but didn't parenthesize after. It's a short-term rental.
Oh, okay, thank you. Have we had any applicants for, I have a couple others for you. Have we had any applicants for the planning position?
I'm not aware of any so far. The applications are still open, so we'll see.
Afraid of that, yeah.
Trustee Ranovich, that position will be closing on Friday. It's a re-advertisement from what we had previously advertised. As you all are aware, unfortunately, we had offered a position to a great individual who is in the military, and unfortunately, her date got pushed back. So with the timing of where we're at now and receiving no applications, it perhaps might fall into place at this point that we could bring her on. But again, she's at will of the United States military.
Have we considered a recruitment person or a recruitment agency to try to find somebody?
I have not, we have not utilized a recruitment agency. However, I do want to let you know that every day we receive emails from the Association of Professional Planners from everywhere all over the state that are looking for planners. I mean, it is a shortage.
It is.
And we're trying to scratch our heads to find out where they're going, what's happening once they graduate from school. Are they leaving the state? What's happening? But it's all over. It's a shortage everywhere for this position.
I can relate. Yeah. That August evaluation for building permits for commercial, it's 27 million, not 2.7 million, right? This is still up for you, Maida.
I believe the number is correct, but I can double check.
That would make sense if it's the village center. I just was curious.
I believe that's what what's
It made my eyes pop out when I saw it. One thing never mind. I was going to ask about public meetings, and there aren't any right now because we're kind of stuck in muddy water for the time being for 4th Street. Fred, I had nothing. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you. We're going to move to item 9, which is financial business. Discussion and approval of the September 2022 cash report. Administrator Simon.
Mayor and trustees, before you is the cash report for September, and short of having our treasurer, Will Fisher, here, he has provided us with a notice that I'll just read it. On October 8th, he sent us a note that says, I've reviewed the cash report for the month of September 30th, 2022, with ending cash balance of $10,622,311.12. The biggest item of significance is the second half of the Rescue Act. We received $756,534 We've already designated and appropriated all of that funding. We did that in 2020 when we received the funding. You may recall we received it in 2 tranches. The first tranche is in our books and appropriated. This tranche we just received. While it is designated and appropriated, we can still review it at any time.
Thank you, Administrator Simon. Before I get to discussion from the governing body, I do need a motion to approve the September 2022 cash report.
I make a motion to approve the September 2022 cash report.
I need a second.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Now, is there any discussion from the governing body? I'll start with Trustee Pacheco.
I have none, Mayor. Thank you.
Trustee Benavides.
Yeah, of course. So I just find it confusing, and you're going to, and I know you're covering for someone, but it's always confusing when you call you say we have a deficiency of revenues over expenditures, yet it's a positive number, right? Is that common accounting practices to do that? I mean, to me, it's revenues over expenditures means R minus E, right? And that would be a positive number. That makes sense. But to call it a deficiency is just confusing to me. Why do we do that?
Mayor and Trustee Benavides, I'm not an accountant. All I can say is on that one column where you're seeing the deficiency, it's the current period.
Yeah.
And it's what we budgeted for in that period, not overall. That's why, generally speaking, I look at the last 4 columns. The 4 columns on the right give sort of the bigger, longer-term picture. If you want to look at the monthly balances, you look at the first 3 columns.
No, but well, I mean, if we go to the next page, page 64, and we look at the sum totals down below, I mean, you see that number, $753,918 that was called a deficiency, but it is a positive number.
It's not a deficiency. If you look at the number 753, it doesn't have a parentheses in front of it, so therefore it's not a deficiency.
Yeah, that's
So
my point.
I think the word deficiency is a misnomer.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Go ahead, sure.
I can add, I questioned that for
How
a
many
year or
years?
so. Yeah, years
So
ago.
you just gave up?
And I finally gave
When
up.
Tammy
I just
comes
said,
back,
I'm gonna
we'll
learn
ask
to
her
understand
why it's like
but,
that. Go ahead,
That
Trustee
goes clear
Benavides.
back to Nancy Haynes, and I don't know why we have it that way, but it's very confusing.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we should be happy about, right? And it sounds like, oh my God, we lost money.
No, we didn't lose money.
But anyway, so on page 64, why doesn't the TPF money show up here? Transportation, what is it called? Project fund?
Project. Do you want to take that? I don't. Okay. Mayor, Trustee Benavides, I believe that it does show up, and we can get Tammy's input, but it is, I believe it's in the 216 fund, which is the municipal street fund. That's where we take all of our project funding. You're just seeing a lump sum.
Okay.
It's in there, I'm pretty sure.
Okie dokie, let's see. On page 69, somebody probably asked this question in the past, but I forgot. What is BOK Financial?
Mayor, Trustee Benavides, that is the Bank of Albuquerque, but they are based in Oklahoma, so it's BOK for Oklahoma.
Right. Well, okay, that's why that question probably gets asked quite often. And let's see, that's all I have. Thank you.
Trustee Lewis.
Thank you. On page 66, for the month. And general administration, can you tell me why we went so far over budget in September?
Trustee Lewis, trustees, Mayor. I know the answer to this question, and I can't remember it. It's, we are usually billed for the line item that was removed from here in July, and for some reason the billing was late, but I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank at what exactly we paid out, but it was a budgeted item, and it should have come out in July.
Okay, well, if it comes to you, I know how that works. Just raise your hand real quick before you forget. But I would like you to follow up with me on that. On page 69 in the check register, check to Albuquerque Publishing Company, low wage package. I have no idea what a low-wage package is, but maybe that's why we're not getting candidates if we're advertising low wages.
Exactly.
No. Could you explain that to me?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Trustee Lewis, trustees. That is just the way the journal categorizes the billing for municipalities when we put notices in the classifieds, basically. It's separate from our notices, our public notices, which you can see is a different.
Another check, yeah.
It's the same check, it's just a different invoice item. In this case, it was to advertise for the planner.
Oh, okay. Interesting. The next page, oh no, I got that one answered. Page 72. The check to Universal Constructors for Chamiso Lane and Arada Lane.
Yes, Mayor Lopez, Trustee Lewis. This is actually a project that was budgeted. It was part of our facilities maintenance plan. We are really pleased that we were able to knock it off so early in the year. It is a grading of Chamiso Lane, and the project is beautiful. It turned out really well.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, Trustee Radnovich.
I have no questions.
Okay, I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Benavides.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Item B, discussion and approval of resolution number 2022-10-01, a resolution recommending budget revisions related to the road fund department for the village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque. I'll start with Administrator Simon and then follow with Maria Rinaldi.
All right, thank you, Mayor, trustees. Let's see. This budget adjustment request is for an adjustment from two funds. First, the 216 Road Improvement Fund, and then the line item for computer support. On the computer support, we're trying a hybrid approach, which you saw tonight, where we were allowing a member of the community to participate in our meeting from the comfort of their home via computer, via Zoom. This allows for more accessibility and allows people to participate remotely without having to get a larger facility. I know we've heard calls for a larger facility. As you know, the participation in our meetings waxes and wanes. A larger facility would be several years away. This is our attempt to try this new technological approach. And Kiko's been great. He is now having to be here live versus being remote. That is an additional cost, and therefore the bar request before you tonight. Hopefully that answers your question. On the 216 fund increase, Ms. Rinaldi touched on this earlier today, but she can flesh that out for you here.
Mayor, trustees, I don't know how much you want me to flesh this out, but I'd just like to remind you of what the scope of the project is first, if you don't mind. It's pulverize and repave Tyler Road, both sections, both east and west of 4th Street. It's crack seal Green Valley Road from Rio Grande Boulevard to 4th Street. It's crack seal Ranchitos Road from Rio Grande Boulevard to the east village limits. Crack seal of Dietz Farm Circle, crack seal of Dietz Farm Loop, which includes like Las Campañas and Dietz Farm Place, and crack seal of Willow Road from 4th Street to the East Village limits. And as I said earlier, the price went from $295,539 to $372,828. So the discussion was, do we reduce the scope, eliminate streets? The one that would be eliminated based on cost would be the Tyler Road, which is pulverize and repave, which it really needs. So we're hoping that you will consider a budget increase, a budget adjustment request to allow for this increase to our match to the DOT project and hold this scope whole.
Go ahead. Any further questions? Well, actually, before we get to discussion and questions from the governing body, I do need a motion to approve the BAR.
I'd make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-10-01.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, now I'll get to discussion from the governing body, trustee by trustee. Trustee Pacheco, any questions?
I don't think so. I mean, this is truly just asking for an increase to do something that we've already had in the planning stages. This is just all based on cost. You know, I've ridden my bike on a number of these roads, and they most definitely need this work done. I don't think I have any further questions. Thank you.
Trustee Benavides?
No questions.
Trustee Lewis?
I have no questions.
Trustee Radnovich?
I just have one question. And I hadn't thought about this until I really started to look at this. You know, I walk and ride on bike and car Ranchitos Road often. And is this just the part of Ranchitos? No, it goes from Rio Grande. It doesn't seem that bad to me. So I'm just wondering,
Mayor?
could that be the one part of this that could go away?
Mayor, Trustee Radnovich, so crack seal is not just a repair, but it's a preventative maintenance to extend the life of the road. And these are prioritized according to condition. So, I mean, we're just taking them in the priority level and trying to click them off. But when you see crack seal, the intent is not to have to do a full repavement, which can cost upwards of generally $1 million a mile. This extends the life usually 5 to 8 years if it's a good crack seal job, and the contractor we've been using does really excellent work. So it's an effort to keep it from getting worse.
Got it. Thank you.
Any further questions? Trustee Radnovich?
No.
Okay, I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Pacheco?
Yes.
Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 10.
Mayor, if I could just
right ahead.
interject. I remembered the 68,000. It was right in front of me. So it is in our general administration fund, and it is the non-employee insurance. So this is the insurance that we, the liability insurance that we pay for our property and for workmen's compensation.
Thank you, Administrator Simon.
That's an annual fee then?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the previous motion carried unanimously. Now we're going to move to item 10, unfinished business. A, discussion and approval to adopt ordinance number 290, granting a franchise to Public Service Company of New Mexico to construct, maintain, and operate electric facilities infrastructure in the public rights-of-way within the village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque, repealing ordinance number 60. Attorney Nan Winter.
Mayor, trustees, this is the second reading of this ordinance, and as you know, we heard this last month. Trustee Radnovich requested some additional language regarding standards for tree trimming and cutting. He and I discussed the appropriate standard, which is ANSI standard, I think A300. We included that language, added this language into Section 7 of the franchise. I then visited with Public Service New Mexico, who agreed to the language change. So now we have a standard with respect to tree trimming, and it's a gold standard in terms of ANSI A300. So we made that change. It's ready to adopt. I did want to take a moment to address the comment earlier this evening with respect to, I think the public commenter indicated leveraging Public Service Company of New Mexico into undergrounding. P&M will gladly underground anything. So you don't need the franchise to underground. There is a rate rider number 22, which is approved by the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission. It was approved in 2004. It's called an Underground System Special Services rate. And any municipality acting with governmental authority, that is by resolution or ordinance, can request that a particular line or facility be underground, placed underground. P&M will then come in and determine what the actual total cost of the undergrounding is, and then assess what's called a rate rider. So you'll see a line item on your bill for the cost of that undergrounding. Now, Rio Rancho has been very active, as Maida probably knows, in undergrounding lines. And at some point in time, Rio Rancho residents probably saw 6 to 8 rate riders on their bill for the undergrounding going on in Rio Rancho. So you can petition via resolution or ordinance P&M to underground anything. They'll come in, give you an estimate, and then they will allocate the cost of that in some way to like 87107 or 87114 or whatever, but they will find a way to allocate it to the neighborhood that is benefiting from the cost of that underground facility. So anybody can ask for it, and it doesn't have to be in the franchise. It is a part of the Public Regulation Commission's rate structure with Public Service New Mexico.
Thank you, Attorney Winter. Before I move to discussion from the governing body, I do need a motion to adopt ordinance number 290.
Yeah, so I'll do a motion to adopt ordinance 290.
I need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, now we're going to get to discussion and questions from the governing body. Trustee Pacheco, any questions?
For Attorney Winter, just to clarify, so the rate would be then passed along to the resident of that zip code or that area if something were placed underground?
Correct. Mayor, Trustee Pacheco, correct. So if Los Ranchos by ordinance wanted 4th Street undergrounded, P&M would find a way to assess it to those folks that touch 4th Street and probably within a few blocks of that. I'm not sure what their exact methodology is. I thought it was by zip code. I'm probably wrong on that, but it's something like that.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Any other questions? No, I'm talking about Trustee Pacheco.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, that's it.
Okay, Trustee Benavides.
No questions.
Trustee Lewis.
First, George, I'd like to commend you on getting that language added to our agreement. I think that's fantastic, so
thanks.
Thank you. Secondly, I would like to pursue this. Can we ask P&M? You know, all we can do is get a quote from them, and
well, I don't know.
Then we can choke on it, but
yeah,
you know, we could at least have it, and I don't know if it's something then we talk to the residents about or voters or whatever, but I do agree that it would beautify 4th Street in a lot of ways. I'm skeptical that it's going to be something that's affordable, but I think it doesn't hurt to ask them for it, and so I would encourage that we would ask them to give us an estimate.
Mayor, Trustee Lewis, I think George and I might be able to dig up the one we did on the first phase. It was completely untenable.
but we certainly can, especially in smaller, well, for the first 2A is about the same length as what phase 1 was, but we can certainly ask. We did it on the first phase. We can look at it on the second phase as well.
It doesn't hurt to ask.
That's right.
So let's put them to work, just even if we're not going to use it, but we'll see. I mean, at least we'll have an understanding, and everybody will have an understanding as to what that number is.
Mayor and Trustee Lewis, I also just wanted to add that we did bury the line at Edgewood Park, and just that little short length was close to $14,000.
I know it's astronomical, but again, I think that's something that we could put out to people and just say, here, I mean, I don't know if they get their money back in 1 year or 5 years. I just would like to understand that situation better. And I wanted to, I wanted to comment on a couple things that I thought were, I don't know if they're just standard, or if Nan, you did a great job, or both, but I'm glad that the franchise is not exclusive, that we can do some other things, or bring in some other people if we're not happy with them or want to do some other stuff. I know the 3% was a lot of work to get that number. I want to commend you. I think that's going to be, we were 2% before, right?
Yes, Mayor, Trustee, we got a pay raise.
And so that, that was really good. I was really pleased to see that. I like that it has P&M's recourse for loss. At least there's something in there that we have some recourse against them. And so I thought overall, I liked the agreement, and I thought it was very well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Trustee.
Okay, Trustee Radnovich, any questions?
And I like the agreement as well. I think it's a really good agreement for both them and us. Just to add to what Maria said, I don't know how many of you know it, but when 4th Street was done, there were improvements made to the P&M poles. A lot of poles got replaced, and the lines were raised, and a lot of the poles got pushed back to the beyond the right-of-way, out of the way of sidewalks. As I remember, and I don't remember exactly, just that half-mile piece of 4th Street would have been in the range well into 7 figures, just to underground that one piece. I don't remember the exact number, but it was well into the million range, and I think it was beyond $1 million. So it's really, really expensive to underground utilities. That's why we do it now in newer parts of the village and the greater Albuquerque metro with the project when it's built.
Right.
So I don't have anything else.
Okay. I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Benavides.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 11, new business. A, discussion and approval of resolution number 2022-10-02, a resolution participating in the Transportation Project Fund Program administered by the New Mexico Department of Transportation. Ms. Rinaldi.
Mayor, trustees, this is a successful application on the 4th Street project. It's our 3rd consecutive Transportation Project Fund Award. And we requested a project amount of $1.5 million for construction of the first phase of 4th Street, and we were awarded 100%. And the department's share shall be $1,425,000, and the 5% required match for the village is $75,000. This resolution authorizes the mayor to enter into that agreement so that we may proceed.
Okay, before we get to discussion from the governing body, I need a motion to approve resolution number 2022-10-02.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-10-02.
I need a second.
I'll second that.
I'll get to discussion and questions from the governing body, trustee by trustee. Trustee Pacheco.
I don't have any questions, Mayor.
Trustee Benavides.
do have some questions for you. So previously, when you were up there, I had you define the phases, so we can make sure we're very clear on that. So I look at the purpose, and it reads like a scope of work to me, right? As to what's going to happen here. The revitalization of 4th Street, Phase 2A, includes construction, vehicular lane reduction, ADA sidewalks and crossing, stormwater drainage, pocket park, parking facility, and intersection improvements, lighting, and landscaping. So that, I got that correct, right?
That is correct.
That's the scope, and that's all the money we need to do all those things?
No, of course not.
So
Mayor.
I didn't think so, because Phase 2A was, I've heard numbers like 27 million,
No,
you know,
it's not
for
27.
everything, for all Phase 2, and you divide that by 3, you were looking at about 9 million for each, roughly. So why does the scope make it sound like we're doing all those things for that money?
Mayor, Trustee Benavides, this is not actually a scope. This is the activities allowable for expenditure of these funds. I pretty much put the kitchen sink in these so that we're covered for all potential expenditures under construction.
But shouldn't we make it clear that this does not cover that total, all those tasks? Shouldn't that be clear? Because if you read it, it makes it sound like that's covers all those items.
So again, it's different from a scope. It's allowable expenditures.
Am I correct, Maria, that this is what we were awarded by the New Mexico DOT?
Correct. This is,
So they
yes.
gave, this is an award.
And we
Oh, yeah.
may expend it on these construction activities.
I don't have a problem with
Yes,
any
I
of
know.
this, and, you know,
In-
my vote will reflect that. But I just think if I was to walk into this meeting and not have a good idea of the history, I would think that this money was to cover all those items. And it's just not clear that it does not do that. And maybe that's just how we do these things.
Unfortunately, this is an NMDOT boilerplate.
Okay.
I could add language to future resolutions that define what the overall scope of the project is, what the total project cost is. The resolution is just accepting this amount of money that may be expended on these activities. But I'll quickly tell you that Phase 2A is $8,969,000. Good math there, taking 3 phases with the 27 million that we have as an engineer's estimate. We have 3 million, with this award acceptance, we have 3,450,000 towards that 8.9 million necessary, 3,450,000 towards that needed construction fund. So in the future, I can certainly do that. I can attach a memo that explains, like my report does.
Yeah.
If you look at my report says exactly that, what is funded, what the amounts of funding are. But yes, I can add language that gives the overall scope of the project and then identifies this as not a scope, but allowable expenditures.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Certainly.
Let's see, maybe was that might be, let me check here. That was it. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Lewis.
Yes, Maria. So I want to make sure that we're not committing to this money unless 4th Street is getting built and we're going to use it before June 30th, 2025.
Mayor.
By agreeing to this, we're not committing today unless we go forward with Phase 2A and get all the funding for it. Is that correct?
Mayor, Trustee Lewis, that's exactly right.
Okay.
This is just one more drop in the bucket of funding that we need. And in the transportation improvement project, regional transportation plan that we participate in through the COG that tracks all of the money that comes into the region from all of these sources, there's always opportunity to move project funds around within the region. If we were unable to expend this fund before it expires, there's always opportunity to switch, for example, with the Village of Los Lunas for a project they have programmed out in the outer years, but they're ready to go. They're just waiting for money. We can swap within the region so that nobody loses money, and that it's still banked in the future outcoming years so it's really flexible. This is not like a legislative appropriation that reverts on June 30th, 2 or 3 or 4 years after it's awarded.
Okay, thank you, Maria.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions?
I have no further questions.
Trustee Radnovich.
I just have a quick question for Maria. Maria, if we decided to use that money for something other than the full project on 4th Street, could we?
Mayor, Trustee Radnovich, I'm not quite following.
So let me use an example. There's that horrible fault in the middle of 4th Street, right on the center line between Ranchitos and
Just
Los
north of
Ranchos, I
Ranchitos,
believe.
yeah.
And that is a danger. I've thought it was a danger for years. Could we use some of that money to just simply fix that, even if we're still trying to figure out how to do 4th Street in total?
Mayor, Trustee Radnovich, excellent question. Not this one, but the legislative appropriations are written, again, kind of kitchen sink in general. They're improvements to 4th Street as part of the 4th Street revitalization project. So we have a lot of flexibility in that. And Ann and I are actually discussing about ways we might use the balance of phase 1 and get some improvements done before we're even into the next phase.
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
that's really smart anyway.
So, yes.
Okay, that's the only question I had.
Okay. At this time, I'm going to open it up for the general public to comment on this. Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak on this matter? Please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. You have 2 minutes.
David Montoya, 517 Pueblo Solano. I just wondered, Maria, if, well, I guess to the board, are we prepared to spend the additional 4.5 million to go ahead and get this started? Or are we waiting for their funds? I just wondered what what's the next step?
You want to answer that?
And then also, when are we going to be able to weigh in on the design, the 100% design, or prior to the 100% design coming out? So we've been promised this meeting, and I just wondered when that's going to happen.
Mayor, trustees, Mr. Montoya, I explained the phasing. We're closing out the 30% design phase where we accepted the alternative for design to go to 100%. We've hit a roadblock with BHI in that they have a significant price increase. So we're not issuing that task order until we determine how we're going to proceed with the design. As soon as we are ready to proceed with that design, right off the bat, there will be a public hearing. I just can't tell you when that's going to be now. We're meeting with DOT next week. But so the significance in funding necessary for this project is one of the reasons we're phasing it. In more appropriate trunk, 27 million, we have an outstanding application with the federal government under the stimulus project, under the Build Back Better. I forget the rural, anyway, there's a fund. We have a $27 million application out that we hoped that with the federal fiscal year around October that we might be hearing anytime soon. In lieu of that, we're looking at all other potential funding sources to try to put the 8.9 million together. And we've managed to cobble together, every application we submitted has been successful. They're just all relatively small pots of money. Incidentally, in December, the transportation improvement plan, the regional plan will be open and we will be submitting our full project, and that covers 4 years of funding. So we'll be, and that's a potential, a really good potential for us, because
It would allow us to phase it in those years for which they're soliciting projects. But it's just the magnitude of the project and the funding necessary, and you probably know this, this administration saved for 13 years to be able to fund the first phase of 4th Street. So, I mean, we're working as hard as we can to find the funding to continue with the improvements north.
Okay, and then I guess a follow-up, is there opportunity or would it help to have citizen involvement with any of these funding potentials so that maybe some of the public can help with this endeavor?
Let me answer that question. Here's the way it can be done. If we submit a capital outlay request for funding, in the past, residents of Los Ranchos have gone up to Santa Fe and lobbied legislators, and they have actually been successful. So the answer is actually correct. The answer is true.
Or
but there has to be a capital outlay request.
Emailing, calling your senator or representative in support of these projects. But anytime there's an opportunity for participation of the public that may have an influence on award, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And we'll certainly make that known.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, is there anybody else that wants to speak on this matter? Kiko, is there anybody online?
If you are online and you would like to speak on this matter, please use the raise your hand button. Mayor, trustees, there are no hands raised.
The floor is now closed for comments. I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Benavides.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Item B, discussion and approval of a resolution number 2022-10-03, a resolution accepting a celebration permit. Administrator Simon.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. This resolution asks for your approval to vend alcohol on village property. In this case, it's the Alfredo Garcia Community Barn for the Saturday evening concert with Music in the Villages. This is a concert, a collaborative effort to bring music to the village of Los Ranchos from Music and Corrales in collaboration with the village of Los Ranchos. Hops Brewery will be the vendor, and we hope you all can attend.
Thank you, Administrator Simon. Before we get to discussion from the governing body, I need a motion to approve resolution number 2022-10-03.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2022-10-03.
I need a second.
I'll second.
I need discussion or questions from the governing body. I'm going to go trustee by trustee. Trustee Pacheco.
No.
Trustee Benavides.
No.
Trustee Lewis.
No.
Trustee Radnovich.
No.
Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak on this matter? Apparently not. Kiko, is there anybody online wishing to speak on this matter?
If you'd like to speak on this matter, please use the raise your hand button. Mayor, trustees, there are no hands raised.
The floor is now closed for comment. I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Benavides.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich.
Excuse me, yes.
We're going to have our concert on Saturday.
Hey.
Okay. All right, the motion carries unanimously. Item C, discussion and approval of resolution number 2022-10-04, a resolution accepting a letter of agreement and partnership with the Mid-Region Council of Governments, MRCOG traffic analysis. There's two people here, Ms. Maria Rinaldi and Kendra Montanari, the Transportation Planning and Technical Services Manager for Mid-Region Council of Governments. Maria, will you want to go first?
Certainly. Mayor, trustees, before I introduce Kendra Montanari, I would like to just give a recap of this. On August 10th, the Board of Trustees passed a resolution authorizing me to prepare an RFP for a transportation systems analysis based on the scope that was within that RFP. That the analysis should include existing conditions of local circulation and regional traffic, user data, local and regional roadway classifications and their impacts, multimodal users and potentials for additional facilities, and existing and potential connectivity. I took that scope when you authorized that, and I wrote a very expanded scope, which you have seen in your packet. And as I was developing this scope, I looked towards the Mid-Region Council of Governments, Kendra in particular. She is the Manager of Transportation Planning and Technical Services, to kindly do a peer review of the scope that I had written and to have discussions with me on how we might access and leverage our membership in the Council of Governments to access and avail ourselves and our selected professional services provider, the transportation data that is maintained by the Council of Governments on the entire region. I'd like to briefly describe the scope as attached and then introduce Kendra with the Council of Governments so that she could further describe her role and what I see and the administration has seen as the benefits of membership in Mr. COG that we may be able to avail ourselves of. So in the comprehensive transportation analysis, it's very extensive. I'm just going to touch on it. We have the services requested based on the scope that you authorized by resolution in August. And we are requesting a comprehensive transportation analysis of multimodal travel, including the purpose, origins, and destinations, network capacity, and safety of the roadway system within the village, at points of connection of arterials, collectors to the larger metropolitan area. In addition, we wish to identify potential future issues related to growth and development and its anticipated impact of traffic. And lastly, we would like to identify strategies to mitigate existing transportation concerns and opportunities to maximize transportation assets with regards to roadways, trails, transits, bicycles, and pedestrian infrastructure. And what that means is we want to understand the picture of transportation with the community and what potential development, new development, redevelopment, infill development in our system and on our borders, what those impacts are existing and what they may be in the future. And then to potentially come up with ways to mitigate them. This is data collection. This is the picture that we are looking for on our system. Depending upon cost, we would love to look at scenarios for mitigation, alternatives for improvements on areas that are identified having the greatest impacts now and in the future, so that we can prioritize them for funding, so that we have an idea in the context of the environment of each of these roadways, what it is we as a village, what the residents in the area, what the users of the facility want that facility to be. So that's the service requested. It's a research and analysis that includes, this is what the contractor is being asked to do, review all adopted plans and completed studies and recommendations that impact the roadways of the village to include, but anything else that is available, of course, our master plan, the codified ordinances, the chapter 9 in particular, the land use section of our ordinance, and the Connections 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan that is put out by the Council of Governments, by the way. Review any and all available traffic impact studies. We've discussed all of those, the ones the developers have provided, the ones we've done on projects, for all relevant data that's already there. An analysis of daily traffic volumes, including peak hours, speeds, trip purpose, origins, and destinations, including a focus on what is local and what is pass-through, i.e. commuter. An analysis of the difference between design levels of service. What is this road, how is it designed now, and what's its capacity? And actual operating levels of service. Is it meeting the capacity that is on it now for what it was designed for? Is it failing? Is it meeting a certain level of service, or is it failing in that service?
Or is there still available volume to be able to put on that without having to expand it, redesign it, or make any other additional improvements to it? In consultation with the 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the analysis of anticipated level of growth. This is what's really critical to us, and this is what basically started the discussion of this. The concern is, are we taxing our transportation system in the developments that we are approving, what we're visioning in the master plan? So that's specific to that. An analysis of transit, bike, and pedestrian activity in the village and the effectiveness of any existing facilities and what facilities may need to be added to meet that demand. A multimodal analysis of crashes in the village and if those are in any way related to the current design. For example, I'm just going to use this example because it's glaring. The curve at Ranchitos, as you headed north on 4th Street, northbound on 4th Street, the alignment of that intersection that creates a blind spot, we actually had a death there. Our substation, police substation, is named for the officer that died at that intersection. Identify those types of situations within the village. Is it bicycle crashes? Is it pedestrian hits? Is it multi-vehicle, single, all of that? And finally, to identify strategies to mitigate existing traffics as well as potential future issues. Using models, data analysis available through the COG. We want that utilized whenever possible to mitigate the cost of the study and to promote time savings. We understand the urgency of this. We've turned this around since August 10th, so certainly understand the urgency of it. There's a specific section to public outreach. We say that this project requires robust political outreach and engagement at key points in the analysis. And at the end of the day, there's a recommendation report that is an assessment of existing conditions for multimodal transportation. There's a compilation of public input received during the public outreach period. There are findings related to future growth, subsequent traffic projections, and the resulting impacts on the operations of our system. Recommendations that address points of concern with regards to existing and future congestion as well as safety issues, and recommendations that improve the overall usability of the corridor. We are asking that within 10 months, we have a draft report, and within 12 months from the date of the project commencing, we have a final report. That's a lot. I'm going to introduce Kendra Montinari, who would be my partner in crime on this, and I'm going to have her talk about the Mid-Region Council of Governments and what the benefits of our membership is and what this partnership would mean.
Welcome, Kendra.
Mayor Lopez, members of the Board of Trustees, thanks so much for having me here tonight. It's my pleasure. I just wanted to fill you in a little bit about the services that we provide. For those who aren't as familiar with the Mid-Region Council of Governments, we have been around since 1969. We were developed through state statute to help with regional planning in general. And so I think the core of what we offer is a facilitation forum for member agencies. That's policy leaders from across the 4-county area plus Southern Santa Fe to get together and discuss regional issues that are important and they don't abide by jurisdictional boundaries. So transportation, of course, crosses jurisdictional boundaries, economic development, water, and growth issues are all really important to have that forum to really be able to get the information, to learn from each other about best practices, and to make decisions together. And the other thing that we offer is technical services. Most of the time that comes in the forms of maps or data development. We do analysis, we run models, but it also can come in the form of making available our on-call contracting process. We do have an on-call contracting process that we open up once every 4 years. It's a competitively vetted process. We put it out to all engineering and planning firms across the region and nationally. And we sit down internally with a team and we vet, whose applications should be awarded a contract. Those are vetted based on project understanding. How well do you understand what we do at the COG? They're based on the qualifications and the experience at each of the firms, as well as the technical approach, and that's communications and quality control. And I've been fortunate to be involved in this process, so I did see it happen, and it was, a great process. We came out with many firms that we now have on call, so that whenever we have projects, and this is through the COG, it's through the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and through Rio Metro, we have these firms that we can then ask to work on a project without having to do all that work over again. So this is a service to our member agencies as well, because there's a time savings involved. Hopefully it makes the process smoother and more efficient to reach out to these firms. And lastly, I think a strong benefit of these firms are we have a working relationship already. So they know our data, they understand what we have, and they are a little bit, they can kind of hit the ground running in terms of these studies because they know what data exists and how to get it. That's about all I had, and I'm open.
Okay, Kendra.
Yes.
Before I get to discussion and questions from the governing body, I need a motion to approve resolution number 2022-10-04.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-10-04.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, I'm going to get to questions and comments from the governing body, trustee by trustee. Trustee Pacheco.
Wow, that's a lot of information. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, Maria, I think you did a great job at including a lot of the resident concerns that we've heard over the past months in this this study. I feel like we heard a lot, and we probably didn't even think of some of the things that the residents did. So it's nice to see that a lot of that is in here. I do have some questions with regard to the expertise that you have as part of this. Are they, so you said that you go out kind of not only regionally but nationally. Are the firms that are listed here, are those all local? Are they national in scope?
Sure. Mayor Lopez, Trustee Pacheco. The firms that I have listed are mostly have a local presence, and I'm looking for the list in front of me. I think there may be one. They've all worked locally, and most of them have a local office. I think it's Cambridge Systematics that don't have a local office, but they have worked with us in the past. The rest of them do have a local presence. Parametrics, Bohannon Houston. I'm not sure about Bohannon Houston, but I know Parametrics and HDR and Lee Engineering have other offices, Phoenix, Dallas, Seattle. So they are national as well.
And I can comment on that too. HDR, WSP, Bohannon Houston, and even Parametrics. Not only do they have local offices, but they have expertise from their other offices.
And to me, that's so important. I mean, if there are things that are working in other similar communities to ours that have faced kind of the similar issues that we've faced, and they can bring some of that expertise from other places, I think it benefits us as opposed to just looking at what we've done in New Mexico. I feel like that's important. Of course, we want to maintain, kind of our culture and traditions here, but I also feel like if something's working somewhere else, it could very well work here. So thank you for letting me know on that. Let's see. The term. So the franchise is for a period of 10 years. I'm not quite understanding what that means.
Trustee Pacheco, the franchise.
It's under, let's see, Section 2, Grant of Franchise.
This is not a franchise.
I don't know why,
Is it in the RFP in the,
it's on page 115.
Danielle, can you show that?
That's a different agenda item.
Oh, I'm sorry, maybe I went too far
That's okay.
down, I guess. Sorry about that. Well, I lost my place, so I'm gonna just hold off for now. If I have some other questions, I'll pop up here.
Okay. You want me to move on?
Sure.
Trustee Benavides.
Yes, a few things. I think you're a tremendous resource, and we ought to use you as a resource. So I'm looking, oh, where is it? I lost my, okay. At the letter from the mayor and the Board of Trustees, and there's a paragraph towards the, oh, no, it's a mayor from Dewey Cave to the mayor and us. But towards the bottom, it says that the village is responsible for all aspects of the contract management and billing unless different arrangements are made. So I'm going to assume that we are responsible for all aspects of the contract management and billing, okay? So keeping that part in mind, I go to page 110, section E, and project management. Okay, so the consultant will be expected to serve as a project manager and track schedule, budget, check-in meetings, and deliverables. The consultant will report directly to the Village of Los Ranchos, which will have an internal project manager, which I assume would be you. So I'm going to ask if there's a duplication of effort and who is really has the final say as a project manager.
So Mayor, Trustee Benavides, this is a really good question. This project manager is the person assigned from the firm selected to work directly on that end of their stuff in coordination with me and with the technical advice from MRGC, from Mr. Cog. But they're the ones that are in charge of the scope as I presented in the RFP.
Okay. Okay, so the question is there a duplication of effort?
I can answer that. There isn't, and let me tell you why. The firm has their own project manager who's responsible for quality control, ensuring that all the staff working for them is actually accomplishing the scope of work that's being done, tracks billing, sends invoices. So there is no duplication. Every firm that I have ever worked with has their own project manager. Then the village, because we're the owner, we have an internal project manager. There's no duplication of effort, none whatsoever.
Mayor, Trustee Benavides, we would have very different roles.
I'm sorry?
We would not have the same roles.
Okay, and who would be accountable if certain tasks are not completed?
Another good question, Mayor, Trustee Benavides. It would be my role to make sure that their project manager is ensuring that all the tasks and all of the deliverables are all of the benchmarks are met in accordance with the agreement.
Thank you. One more question. So this is going to go out on bid for request for proposals, I assume, right? And so will there be metrics to scoring the proposal, and who would be on the team for scoring?
Mayor,
bids?
Trustee Benavides, so this will go out to the firms that are already on retainer by the COG. They will submit a proposal with a quote. This is the great thing. This is where we get into pricing, so that you know that this is an unbudgeted activity currently within the village budget. So it will be a committee to be put together of myself, of Kendra, of Ann, Maida, and whomever else, potentially a trustee. I'm not, that's a procurement thing with Danielle. So scratch that. We don't do that anymore. And we would create the criteria on which we would score, rate, and rank the proposals received. And then we would look at the cost proposals, and we would have the internal budget discussions on what we can afford within that scope.
So it will go to the firm or firms?
Firms, all firms on this.
Okay, good.
Trustee Benavides.
All right, that's all the questions I have.
Okay, trustee Lewis.
Thank you. I think most of my questions have been answered. I had a lot of concerns, and you helped me with how you vet the companies you have on retainer, because I think this is such a critical study for the village that I really wanted to make sure we're totally confident in the people that are on the list. And it sounds like it's a good mix of local and national. So that cleared up my biggest concern. I also would like to, for the benefit of the people in the audience who we've heard you, I was very pleased with these 3 points. It says the contractor will work with the village to determine a specific outreach strategy to traditionally underserved populations. The contractor will hold a minimum of 2 public meetings. The first meeting shall be held following the existing conditions analysis. The second meeting will be held to present the final report recommendations. The contractor will be responsible for attending 3 to 5 community events in order to collect input from village residents and inform them of the study. So I was very pleased to see that in this, and I have no further questions.
Okay, so trustee Radnovich, your turn.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question that's probably, it's probably all relative, but do you have any idea how much a study like this will cost? Do you have any range? I mean, is it bigger than a bread box? Is it, you know, are we looking at $100,000 study? Are we looking at a $50,000 study?
So Mayor?
And I was asking actually Kendra that question.
It's the same question I asked her. So may I address that, Trustee
Yes,
Radnovich?
you may.
So another reason why I called Kendra was to try to get some understanding of corridor studies that the Council of Government does that may be of the same or similar breadth. And what we're thinking on the analysis component, not necessarily to start addressing alternatives for improvement, but on capturing existing conditions and identifying areas that we need to concentrate on to design for those improvements. We're thinking that it's somewhere in the range, and this is kind of a wide range, but we're thinking of somewhere in the range of between $50,000 and $75,000. When I first put the whole scope together and showed it to Ann, and she almost choked because I was probably in the range of $100,000 to $125,000. So I've pared that scope back. That is not to say that we can't get into if we identify, I'm going to use Chavis Road, even though that's a project already in flux. I'm going to use Chavis Road for an example. If we decided that we need to come up with 5 alternatives to take to the public to cost out for engineering and construction, that's a whole other significant project. And we'd like this to be the basis to identify those areas where we have to do just that for planning and budgeting purposes, but also to give us an idea of where we're headed, kind of in a master planning format of what we want these roadways to look like. What is it that we see needs to be addressed? And what do we want them to look like? We certainly don't want them to look like roads in the subdivision. We don't want them to look like roads typical to the heights. We want them to be reflective of the environment here, built to this kind of scale, but to accommodate the multimodal users that we have now identified.
I have more questions.
And Kendra can actually add something.
Oh, sure.
Mayor Lopez and Trustee Radnovich. I just wanted to add that if we find that all of the cost estimates come at a range that is too high, it's definitely possible that we can go back and we can look at the scope and we can pick out the priority areas and send it back out. So, you know, there's flexibility in how that works, and there's a negotiation process.
Is there flexibility in using or not using the on-call engineers that you have on call?
So Mayor Lopez, Trustee Radnovich, if we were going to use the on-call process, we'd have to use the engineers and the planners that are on call. One thing is frequently these firms will subcontract. So all these firms are now multidisciplinary and a whole range of expertise. And they get that, like we were saying, by pulling from other areas, maybe even in a different firm. So for example, we did Golf Course Boulevard Complete Street Study, and it was Bohannon Houston, and they worked with Lee Engineering. So,
They worked with who?
Worked with Lee Engineering on some of the traffic signal timing. So that's also a possibility as well.
So I don't think that this is a very good technical scope. It covers a lot of the things that I think our citizens, our residents wanted to see. However, I don't think it's the scope that at least I thought we were getting. And I go back to when, Alan, when you first brought this up, you said you wanted a visionary look at this, and I don't think this will get us that. It's more of an analysis. And the other thing is we talked about having a multidisciplinary team, and I get what you're saying, Kendra, but I think this is going to be primarily an engineering team, just because of the way the scope is written. It's not really that kind of a scope, my humble opinion. I think the project needs to start with our quality of life goals as a village. And I think that I'm not sure that the village even understands that. So I think public meetings are great, but I think this kind of a project needs to start with a charrette and really getting at what the people of the village think the village is and what we think our quality of life goals are for a project like this. So I don't think it's as context sensitive to the village of Los Ranchos as it could be. And I don't think it was written that way. I think it was written to be a technical approach. This all begs, for me, this all begs the question of how do we approach our transportation network in the village, and how do we want to plan it? The traffic analysis is all well and good, but I think we need to come up with a better long-term approach that feeds into this in terms of us as a village, of our goals as a village. And lost my notes. Just a second, sorry. One of the other things I thought about when I was looking at this is I think it needs to imagine how our transportation network contributes to the village of Los Ranchos. And, you know, I often think that streets are looked at, and I realize I know about complete streets. I've worked within that range myself, but streets are really commodities beyond just the transportation system that they are. And we also in the village utilize, for instance, the trails along the acequias in the village and the drains in the village pretty extensively. And so horses use them, people use them. So I think that we need to, my opinion is that we need to think about this a little more as a village before we go out and just get an analysis like this done. I think we need to think about how we want to use our streets in a more visionary kind of way. than a pure analysis, which is the way I read this. So it's a different way of looking at it, I think, than what this analysis proposes. And that's my opinion. So that's all I had to say.
Okay, let me ask Kendra a question. Traffic analysis generates data and a lot of other things. Isn't that the first step in any planning tool? You're a planner. I mean, maybe you can answer that question. Maybe you might not want to, but it seems like you have to start here before you really move into some of the other aspects of a potential project. Tell me about this.
Mayor Lopez, I mean, excellent question and a really great debate, and I think probably a debate that planners have been having for a long time. I think you are sort of talking about two different approaches. I know that, you know, and I'm going to use the example of art because it's the one that comes to mind. It started with community charrettes and a visioning process. And if you're going to have a station, how do you want to embody what this neighborhood is? This is a comprehensive transportation study. So if the question is, where are our problem spots today? How are we going to grow? And where are those problem spots going to be tomorrow? And how can we best plan today for that growth and mitigating those issues before they happen? Then it's somewhat the study that we put forward. And Ms. Rinaldi did have a big section at the beginning on quality of life and the goals of the comprehensive plan. And I think that that would need to be a conversation that is had with the firm. And this is something that, again, grows and we can negotiate. And we'll have to, a lot of times we have a scope like this when we go out. And then when we hire the firm, we'll nail down the specifics. And that's when we talk about, look, we really want to talk about placemaking and community. So all of that can happen as part of it, even though it's not necessarily in here. So they are two different things, but I work for the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and when we look at an area and we want to understand current, like everything does start with data collection. What is the existing situation today, and then how do we move forward?
So Kendra, I asked you this question the other day and you answered it quite nicely. Don't you have over 20 years of experience in this area?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that answers my question.
Mayor, I have a question. George, I just want kind of your thoughts. I mean, where do you feel like we've not received information from the community? I feel like that process would be starting all over again. I feel like we did hear from the community in regard to, you know, wanting a traffic study and wanting to know what areas of our community are problem areas and are going to be affected by traffic.
I don't think it comes, we heard that everybody thought that everyone who attended a lot of the meetings we've been in for the past few months thought that our transportation network doesn't work, especially around 4th and Osuna. That's what we heard. But we didn't hear about any of the other streets. We didn't hear from.
We did.
Not really. No, we didn't. And so I think that we need to take a good look at a vision for what we want our street network to be in the future. And I think this is more of an analysis. I'm not saying this is a bad thing at all. I think we're talking about two different things here.
But we have to start somewhere, I guess.
I think we start with an outline of where we want to go before we start with hiring an engineer to do a study like this. That's what I'm saying. So I think Kendra hit it on the nose for me anyway. We're really talking about two different things. I am anyway. So I think we need more discussion about what we want to get out of this in terms of our goals as a village.
How does that coincide though with what we're doing? You know, I mean, if we're gonna put something like this off again for a longer period of time, you know, how are the results gonna affect what's happening, what's being done now, if we're waiting again to, you know, to get more input and to kind of discover, you know, kind of the street systems that we'd like to see?
What we tend to do, in my humble opinion, is we respond and try to respond very quickly to what we think we hear from residents and others. And we made this a kind of an emergency because a lot of residents think it's an emergency. I don't think it is. I think we need to put more thought into what we want out of this in terms of what the village goals are in general, not just from a transportation perspective, because the land use perspectives overall within the village are what drives this, not each individual street. So this is about what the village might look like in terms of transportation and land use in the future. And the master plan tried to do that, but not from this perspective, not from the street perspective, not from the street as commodity perspective, if you want to look at it as something other than just a street, a complete street, yeah. I just think about it differently. And when Alan said visionary in the first time we talked about this, which was 2 meetings ago, I thought it should be just that. And this is more of a engineering study that will analyze and then promote kind of fixes for the transportation system, so that the things that we think might, well, I won't go there, but it's more of an analysis of that as opposed to integrating those transportation ideas into our whole vision for the village, in my opinion.
And if I may.
Go right ahead.
George, I feel like visionary is the word, sort of, but I also feel like until we have data in hand, then's the time to say, here's the data. Now let's talk about our streets and how we want them to work and how do we get there, knowing this data. I mean, we all know, whether specific streets were discussed or not, traffic's an issue, and it's just going to get worse every day as long as they're building houses in Rio Rancho and jobs in Albuquerque. And so I want to see us get away from, we're going to put a stop sign here and a speed hump there. Until we have data in our hands, it's going to tell us this is our key areas that we need to address. Here's some priorities, and then at that time, then you can get visionary about how we want it to work when we're going to go solve the issue. But I think, personally, I think it is 2 different items, but I think we need to start with data.
Yeah, and I
really understand where we are and what's coming.
Let me pose it to you with a kind of an analogy. So we just voted on, and this is I'm just using it as an analogy. We just voted on a infrastructure system for the Paseo del Norte open space last month. $500,000 for a loan, really good loan, great loan, but we're putting in this underground, or I think we're going to put in this underground pipe that's going to segregate different portions of the open space to equalize the water. We aren't doing a plan first. We're not doing a plan first. We're doing this infrastructure system to equalize the water, but we don't really know what those fields are going to be used for in the end, because we haven't done a plan for it. So I see this the same way. You start to, does that make sense? It doesn't make sense to you.
It's not making sense to me based on what I saw at the Del Norte open space and what they presented to me. I thought that was a pretty good plan. Now, we don't know specifically what crop is going to grow in each one, but we know we're going to enhance the ability to save water, to water it better, to water it quicker, and quite possibly have other,
But we may not need water where we're putting it.
How do you know that, George?
I don't.
Okay, you just answered your question. You don't know.
No.
Okay?
No, what I'm saying is,
Okay.
Mayor, that without doing a plan for the area first, there might be areas that we're planning to irrigate that may not need it.
I didn't see that. I saw, here's our plan to irrigate for the agriculture of the village. And I didn't see anything that would make me think we want to get away from raising different kinds of crops or cover crops or whatever for that space. So I felt like there was a plan.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was
I think it's just two different ways of looking at things that we have. So, yeah, I think a better route would be to put more time into planning what that transportation system means to us.
Other comments from the governing body? Go ahead.
Let me give it a try.
Genevieve.
So I agree that we did a poor job of not presenting a plan before we passed a resolution to do a loan for the Del Norte open space, but that is for construction. So we're not doing any construction here. True. And I would say the data would not taint the vision, okay? So let's think of an example. In fact, maybe a couple of things. You know, I've heard of universities planting grass everywhere, and then they look at where the grass wears down, and hey, that's where they put the sidewalks, right? Well, that's kind of like the data. So let's look at another example. Guadalupe Trail. We get a lot of bicycles, great, and a lot of pedestrians up and down Guadalupe Trail. I'd like to see the data that quantifies that and say, hey, this would be a good stretch of road to promote for bicycles and pedestrians, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't think that the data is going to taint the vision.
I think we might look at what kind of data we need if we had a vision first. So it's.
At this time, I think I'd like to open it up for the general public. Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. You have 2 minutes. Come forward.
Hi, Nancy Dangeroni, 7315 Guadalupe Trail. I love this discussion. As an engineer, I'm a product designer, and I've been working with New Mexico Tech students and some professors there, and I've been trying to get them to change the way that they teach their students, because I gotta take that off. What they do is they tend to go overboard on the planning, and as an engineer, I've had tremendous success out there over a long career with kind of a hacker approach. Where I build something and I give it to somebody and I watch them use it and I listen to what they tell me about it, and then I fix all the problems in it. And there's this fundamental tension between planning and responding to your observations when you make changes. And I think that from what I've seen in the few months that I've been attending trustee meetings, I think I see the village and the trustees and the mayor moving towards being very responsive to, and perhaps you were there first, I don't mean to be insulting, very responsive to what's going on with the village and the community. And I would encourage, I think it's great to get data, and George, I love what you're saying. I love a more holistic approach, a more sort of top-down, what do we want the village to be? I think that's terrific, but at the same time, you know, you gotta fish or cut bait at some point. And I think it's a good idea to get that data, to see where the traffic is going. And then that'll give us time. We're gonna have a year while that's going on, where we can talk about what do we really want? You know, where do we want to move it from where we are now? So I love the conversation. I love that there's, you know, both sides kind of in terms of starting out with a vision and then, getting the empirical data and all. But the problem with getting a vision also is that it privileges the people who participate in creating that vision, whereas data is very democratic, right? Yeah. How people are using the community right now. And I think that I have no fault. Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. I have no problem with this course of action, even while I totally embrace what George is saying, okay? So, thank you, guys.
Okay. Is there anyone else from the public who wants to speak? Please come forward, state your name and address. You have 2 minutes.
Gordine McKenzie, 7315 Guadalupe Trail, Northwest. I hear what Nancy's saying. I hear what the rest of you are saying. I'm saying it would be wonderful if we could all sit down and create a vision. We do go through ditches. There are all kinds of nooks and crannies around the village. And maybe we really look at how that too is going to be impacted with more population. And I'd like to take time to really think about it and collaborate on it. And yes, there is data, but sometimes data is data driven and kind of drives itself. And so I'd like us to be able to drive it a little bit more. And I do love the conversation too.
Is there anyone else from the audience? Please come forward, state your name and address. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening, Loretta Chavez Smith, 536 Chavez Road Northwest. Everything that you guys are saying is really well and fine. My question to you guys is, what's going to be the cost to go in with this agreement and partnership? There was nowhere, stated nowhere, what this is going to cost the village to do this agreement. They did?
A range.
Okay, but it wasn't in the packet.
No, because we don't have that number. It's just a guesstimate right now.
That would be based on the RFP and response to it.
Oh, okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Are you specifically asking what it may cost us to have COG involved?
What's it gonna cost us to have this resolution?
agreement.
To do this agreement?
There is no cost to us through the Council of Governments. That is zero. The cost is proposed by whomever responds to the request for proposals.
For what the project that we want them to
Correct.
analyze.
And
But it's not gonna cost the village anything to be a part of this.
correct. There's no cost associated.
That's great, thank you.
Is there anyone else from the audience? Please come forward, state your name and address. You have 2 minutes.
Jennifer Kiefer, 722 Mullen Road. I appreciate the discussion. Thank you. I think I agree with Gordine and George. I think the village, in what I've noticed over the last several months, always puts the horse before the cart. I mean, the cart before the horse. Does it the opposite, instead of the horse before the cart. And I think we need to slow down. Because that needs to be looked at, kind of the way that we use modes of transportation are different. And I always get concerned when we start talking about huge firms from metropolitan cities, because we've kind of seen what a developer from Seattle does to the village. So I'd love to kind of slow it down and really look at what our vision is, so we make sure it's a rural vision, not an urbanization vision, and put it together appropriately.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wants to speak on this matter? Go ahead, you have 2 minutes. State your name and address.
David Montoya, 517 Pueblo Solano. But, I just want to say, I really like what George is talking about, that sometimes we do this. We get excited and we do stuff. I'm just going to mention that we have like Palindrome out there with 200 and plus units and 200 parking spots. We have other units that are being built with about half of what the county requires. So it's good to take this approach and look at our vision. But I want to make sure that we keep in mind, getting to Sandra's, she sounded ready to, we don't want to hold things up, but our moratoriums are sitting out there. And so maybe we do need to move a little bit, because these moratoriums, I hope, will hold to this traffic study. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anybody else who wants to speak? Kiko, is there anybody online who wants to speak?
If you would like to speak on this matter, please use the raise your hand button. Mayor, there are no hands raised.
The floor is now closed for comments. I'm going to call for the question. I'm going to call for the roll call vote. Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Benavides.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich.
No.
The motion carries 3-1. Item D is the next item, discussion and approval to advertise ordinance number 291, granting a franchise to the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority to provide water and wastewater service in the public rights-of-way within the village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque, repealing ordinance number 204. Administrator Simon.
Mayor Lopez, trustees, thank you so much. Before you is the updated franchise agreement with the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Water Authority. Much like the PNM franchise, this will have 2 readings. This is the first reading. Some of the highlights of this agreement, we have agreed with the Water Utility Authority for a 4% gross receipts revenue share, which is really one of the best franchise agreements we have. And in fact, it's one of the best in the state. So we're really happy that they were amenable to holding to the 4%. The other great thing about this is the term. Most of these agreements are in the 20 to 30 year range. The Water Utility Authority has allowed us to have a 10-year term. And these shorter terms are really beneficial because we can renegotiate in a quicker time frame. And I stand for questions.
Okay, before I get to discussion and questions from the governing body, I need a motion to approve the advertisement of ordinance number 291.
I make a motion to approve ordinance number 291.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, now we'll get to questions and discussion from the governing body, trustee by trustee. Trustee Pacheco.
Okay, so now I'll go back to my question about the 10 years. I just thought that that was kind of a short period of time for a franchise. So I didn't know if it was maybe a typo or not a typo, but you explained that this was something that was negotiated for a shorter period of time.
Correct. Mayor Lopez, Trustee Pacheco. In all of these franchise agreements, and I know that Nan can attest, we try to get the term as short as possible because conditions change, the economy changes, and once you're locked into these long-term leases, you can't get out of them, or sorry, franchises. So this 10-year allows us for a lot of flexibility.
That's great. And the fee, you said 4%. Does that fluctuate at all?
That is also fixed for 10 years.
Okay, and is that, I didn't really understand, is the fee assessed, I guess, monthly or annually? How is that?
Mayor, Trustee Pacheco, yes. In all of these franchise agreements, the fee is based on the gross revenue of any project that they are conducting in our right-of-way. So anytime they sever the ground, do maintenance and repair, open new service lines, we get a 4% revenue share, and it's assessed on a monthly basis.
please have the mic. Thank you.
Sorry, Mayor, trustee. Sorry, I had my flu shot on Saturday, and it's been tickling me ever since. I can't speak to the Water Authority franchise specifically because, as you may know, I represent the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority, which is why Ann negotiated this agreement. But the 4% is on gross revenue. So if you get a bill from the Water Authority or PNM for $100, you will see 4% of the $100 as a line item on your bill, and that is the rent that the municipality charges. So it's 4% of gross revenue of the utility, which is calculated by how much you have on your bill. That's true for PNM, Gas Company, CenturyLink, Water Authority. And the term on the Water Authority, because I actually wrote this one back years ago when it was, when the Water Authority was created in 2003, the Water Authority went for 4% and a shorter term because it was a new agency. If you recall, the Water Authority was born in 2003. And so they were motivated to be responsive to local government, and then drafted what I envisioned back then was a fairly favorable agreement for local governments when it was first created. No. And
Great.
PNM is a little different. 3% is as high as they'll go in the state. Same thing with Gas Company.
Okay, thank you. Just one, I think, last question, Mayor. What are considered Water Authority facilities? I mean, we see that. What can somebody just kind of elaborate on what that? You know, it states that if a Water Authority facility is placed, it will never be taken away. What are what describes some of those facilities?
I think Nan can jump in here, but we're talking about pipes. We're talking about water and wastewater piping, essentially.
So it's
fire
all
hydrants, that
all
kind of thing.
Distribution
For the
system.
Most part, it's underground.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, and fire hydrants, those kind of things.
Correct.
Meters.
Meters, okay. Okay, and so those things will never be removed from where they're placed with this agreement.
Unless they're upgraded, but then they have to come to us, correct?
Mayor, trustee, correct. Yeah, they would never move them unless you mandate that they relocate them for a project or something.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, Trustee Benavides.
Yeah, just a follow-on question to Trustee Pacheco's question about the type of materials or equipment that this franchise covers. So yeah, I get it. It's a lot of plumbing. Do we have any pumps within the village limits?
Paseo, isn't that within the village?
Yes,
I
that
believe it
is
is.
absolutely within the village. I was also going to say there are a lot of gravity and pumping depending on where you are elevation-wise for sewer and water.
Right.
And it includes that, meaning
Yes.
that all stays in place?
Yes.
Mayor, trustee, I'm going to guess there's no tanks in the village.
Pardon?
I'm going to guess there are no tanks.
Oh, there's no tanks.
No, because you're at the bottom of the hill.
Oh, storage tanks, but there would be pumps.
There are pumps.
Yeah.
Probably for both water and sewer.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. One more question. So on page 123, section 12, conservation. So I'm curious, I'm not passing judgment, but I'm curious if there's any differences going from 204, ordinance 204 to 291 in regards to conservation. In particular, if the Water Authority was to impose water restrictions, you know, like for watering your lawn or something like that, we would abide by that, and would that be the case for 204 as well as 291?
Mayor and Trustee Benavides, I can take a stab at that. That language was pretty much verbatim from the last ordinance, franchise ordinance, regarding irrigation. many of the homes in Los Ranchos irrigate by well. So conservation, we would encourage if they were using city water.
Well, it would be more of an encouragement if they imposed a restriction, we would have to abide, correct? And so what I'm hearing is that would have been the case under 204 anyway.
Correct.
Okay. But we would have to abide, correct?
So that wouldn't be
Nan,
mandatory,
I don't
would
think
it?
that actually is the case.
No.
I know that the city of Albuquerque has a watering schedule, for example. Nan, I don't know if you
Sure, it's
can weigh
voluntary,
in on this.
but it could become mandatory someday. Probably will, yeah.
If you're,
And I'm not
if
passing
you're
judgment on that.
irrigating
I'm
with
not passing,
city
I just want to
water,
understand, yeah,
possibly.
yeah, okay. That's all I have.
Okay, trustee Lewis.
I think all my questions have been answered.
Trustee Radnovich.
Nothing.
Okay. At this time, I'm going to open it up to the general public. Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak on this matter? Kiko, is there anybody online wishing to speak on this matter?
If you are online and want to speak on this matter, please use the raise your hand button.
The floor is now closed for comments. I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Benavides.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 12 is trustee informal discussion. Roundtable discussion is informal. The Board of Trustees will take no official or vote or other action. I'm going to go trustee by trustee. Trustee Pacheco.
I just have one thing, and I want to talk a little bit about the barn because everybody's kind of brought that up. I wanted to ask Administrator Simon to just kind of give us a little bit of information about how the barn's used, who's been using it, has it been, you know, I live close by, so I know it's being used a lot, especially on the weekends. Just want a little more information. How's it affecting our staffing, that kind of thing.
Excellent. Oh, thank you, Mayor, Trustee Pacheco, trustees. The barn has been very popular this spring and summer, and actually all fall. We decided, as was mentioned earlier, it's very cold in the winter, and we didn't want to create a fire hazard with plug-in heaters and so forth. So the term of the barn is March to October, through October. After that, it's too cold to use the barn. The barn isn't insulated. It really doesn't even have a roof. It's got a clear loft. It doesn't have bathroom facilities. It doesn't really even have lighting. It's very low electricity. It's just a barn. It's a shelter. And despite all of that, it's been exceedingly popular for weddings, baby showers, events, corporate events, church events. The Lavender Festival, as you know, has used it. We had a public safety event there with all of the Bernalillo County public safety offices utilizing the barn recently. The growers market and art market are allowed to use the barn on rainy days. We don't allow rentals of the barn at any point on Saturday from 7 to noon. So I don't have a number for you on the kind of revenue that we've received, but it's very inexpensive compared to other kinds of venues for events. And we're really, really happy to have this to provide to the community. I will also say that we've had to dance a delicate dance with the neighborhoods surrounding the barn. They're not always happy to have lots of events. We've mitigated a lot of the issues with the community by putting a notice on our event calendar on the website that shows whether it's a permitted event or just another kind of event that we're holding. For example, the concert this Saturday is on our calendar. A private baby shower, for example, would also just say private event permitted and approved by the village. Those permits require the user coming in, not only paying the modest fee, but initialing that they're going to take care of their own garbage, they're going to abide by our noise ordinance, that they're going to be respectful of the neighbors, they're going to abide by our dark skies ordinance. They have to fill out a special noise permit if their event goes after hours. And all of those things have really helped with the neighborhood to the east. Those neighbors now, if they hear something, they jump online, they see, okay, it's permitted, they know, and so far we haven't had any problems.
Great, thank you. I'm just thinking about the future, and if we were to do, what a lot of residents would like us to do, and I think we've all talked about it as a governing body as well, and trying to provide plumbing and, of course, the bathrooms and insulation and all of that, which is extremely costly. Would it outweigh, people using it? The cost would outweigh people being able to use the barn at that point?
Mayor, Trustee Pacheco, I'm not sure if I can answer that without really having a cost estimate, because we did a cost estimate many years ago, and we would have to get another cost estimate, and we might have to do that given all of the call for better utilization of the barn. But I can tell you right now, it is well utilized. All right, Ms. Rinaldi has pulled up a cost estimate from.
I just did this for a purpose last week.
Okay, we have just a back of the envelope cost of 2.5 million, which I honestly don't even believe that number. Sorry, because sorry, no offense, but just because we have a $1.3 million brand new construction up the street that already has plumbing and parking, and
this is still as a barn.
yeah, and this, yeah, so it would be very rudimentary, but we can certainly look more closely at this. But it's very well utilized. The participants love it. It has been a delicate dance, as I said, making sure that the activities that are occurring there are done in conjunction, in concert with the neighbors.
Well, and I think we all have talked about too, maybe just doing some little improvements, whether it be improvements on the parking lot or, those kind of things that will help. We may not be able to do the 2.3 million renovation, but maybe we can do some things that will help the community moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Benavides.
Okay, my favorite part of the trustee meeting. We're here. So about the barn, we can take smaller steps. For example, the electrical power there is like maybe 20 amps for the whole thing or something. That's why it's so dim. You can't, if it's dark, if it's very cloudy, you can't see the goods that people are trying to sell. So, but the first thing is to give it high priority for our capital improvement. Get it on the list, which I don't think it made the cut this time. So we have to fix that. But let me talk about other things. So, so before you arrived, Nan, I made a motion to change the agenda, and I knew what was going to be the outcome. It was rejected, but I did it as a test because the trustees don't seem to have any power to get anything on the agenda. So I made a motion to include just a discussion of the procedure for trustees getting items on the agenda. And so that was denied because supposedly you have to advertise it. However, here I am discussing it in the informal discussion without any advertisement. So, so I think it's a problem. I don't have a burning issue at the moment, but there have been times when I wish I could have put something on the agenda and I couldn't. So I know if there's a majority of the trustees that want to put something on the agenda, it can be done. However, we cannot assemble because it's, it's the Open Meetings Act, and I don't know how we do that. We can only talk to one person, one trustee at a time.
There is a statute.
And it can't be a rolling quorum, so so we need a procedure on how we do that. Otherwise, there's a huge delay on how we get things on the agenda. So I think that's a problem. In the future, before we allocate funding for items, not for, I don't have an issue with anything that we did today, but for big projects, like the loan that you hear about for the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, I think it would be very prudent that we see a plan that for any kind of construction projects, anything that's, above a certain amount of money, we should have a plan in place so that we know, hey, does this, the amount of money that we're allocating, is that reasonable for the plan that we see in front of us? And then also we know what it is that we're approving, what the end product is going to look like. So if we don't have that in the future, I'm likely to make a motion to defer until we see that sort of thing. Let's see. Oh yeah, about the road improvements. So there's this huge dip in the road on Roll Road right there on 4th by Moses. And it's like a speed hump, I guess, but and it's, I mean, you can almost, I'm afraid I'm going to break my oil pan going through there. Somebody should look at that.
Can I jump in
Yeah, that's all I have.
and respond?
Go ahead, please.
Just Mayor Lopez and Trustee Benavides, just quickly, we do have what we call a road CIP, and it's our own internal ICIP just for road projects, and we'll definitely add that to it if it's not already on there. We just have to pick off the projects little by little.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Trustee Lewis. Trustee Radnovich.
I have a few things.
Go ahead.
Is it proper for me to add to a discussion we've already had and voted on?
Well, under
okay?
informal discussion,
Anything
and
is.
I understand you can talk about anything. Of course you can.
So one other thing I thought about on the transportation study that we just voted on. A vision for a place will guide what statistics become important and what analysis becomes important. And I'm not always a good debater, and I had thought of that prior to when we voted, but it came up again in my mind's eye after we voted. And so there are ways to use a vision for a project that also drive the statistics, the analysis that we need, if that makes sense to anybody. So I just wanted to say that because I think that's true. I've been concerned about the B&B code since we have had those discussions over the past few months. And I really would like to add an agenda item for future discussion to take another look at that B&B code. I think that the types of B&Bs that we're approving in neighborhoods, like, for instance, Rio Grande Boulevard, should be directed more towards 4th Street or maybe Osuna or some of the other more commercialized areas that we want to build, that we want to make better, that we want to make more walkable, that we want to promote. So imagine if we had a B&B that had a owner not on premises, say at 4th and Roll, to use that as an example. Moses goes away at some point, whatever. Those are the kind of places we want to keep B&Bs that aren't owner premised. I think the B&Bs that are that have ownership within the facility, the old school kind of B&Bs are more appropriate in our neighborhoods. We're really inviting motels at a smaller scale into neighborhoods by allowing B&Bs that are not owner premised. And I don't know, Maida, I don't even know if that's, there's probably some legal issues associated with that, or Nan. But it seems to me that it's not appropriate to put what's really a motel in a purely residential neighborhood. You know, the one I live in, the one other, and it strikes me a little bit of NIMBYism, what I'm saying, but it seems to me that we can be more strategic about how we control where certain types of businesses can be placed in terms of the B&B code that we have. So I don't know if you have comments about that. Ann, I saw you reach for the microphone.
Maybe I misunderstood you, but I wanted to clarify, Mayor and Trustee Radovich, that the way we designed it was to mitigate the issues of having these off-premise operators. So you must live at the premise.
But it's not working. We approved one last month. We deferred one last month. I take that back. We deferred one last month. But we're leaving it on our neighbors to decide, for instance, for one that we approved north of Paseo on Rio Grande, to try to control the business aspects of that place. So I'd like to rediscuss the B&B code and see if there are ways we can kind of improve on it and give it a little more strategic sort of orientation and more teeth to not to control where certain types of B&Bs can be. And Maida, you might have something to say about this too. I'm not trying to dig to get you to say anything. I'm just curious.
Sure. Mayor and Trustee Radnovich, I don't know that I have much to say at the moment on it, but I look forward to discussing with you further. It's a living document, as we say.
Yeah, it's a living document. That's right.
Can I add something to that?
Sure, absolutely. Go right ahead.
One big question is, when does a short term become a long term? Because basically right now, you can rent up to 4 rooms, and if there's no definition on when a short term limit is, then basically you're renting 4 apartments from your house. Mm-hmm. So I don't quite understand that.
If I may, Mayor and Trustee Benavides, I believe it's 30 days when it becomes long-term.
I remember that.
I don't see it in the ordinance. Is it in the ordinance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further comments?
I have a couple more things, Mayor. Another thing I've been thinking about is defining our terms. It's really easy for someone to say, we want to be rural, or we want to be urban. But what is that? And I don't think we have a definition in our code. I don't think we have a definition in our master plan, other than the DU requirements for the village center zone, for instance. I believe, I could be wrong about that. But I think we need to define terms like rural, high density, low density, and for which parts of the village those might occur in. And I know we've done that through code, but I think there's more to it than just that. I think we should look into that. And then the last thing is kind of what I was talking about before. I've been thinking a lot about village identity lately. And, you know, the village has multiple identities. And that's probably true with a lot of places, but ours, it's really there's kind of a schism between, say, and I brought this up before, 4th Street and Rio Grande, across the street. And I think we really need to work on our identity and I've said this before, but who we want to be in the future, because they really are different. So it strikes me that we need to look at ways to kind of meld those, not a homogeneity approach, but more of a sort of character zone neighborhood approach. Yeah. And I think we've got character zones, but I think we need to delve deeper into the identity part of that in the future. It's really hard to discern neighborhoods, and it's really hard to discern, to be honest, when we drive into the village. I mean, yeah, we've got those little wooden signs that are about 4 by 8 or something like that, but you don't really know when you enter the village from a lot of perspectives, and maybe there's something we can do about that. So I think I had one more thing, sorry. Yeah, I really was taken, and I agree with what David said, that we need to move into the future more carefully and not as quickly. I think we often try to respond very quickly, and we don't often think about it when we do it, in my opinion. So I think we need to take things more at a pace that we can have time to think about things. And then the last thing is, there's a real mismatch between design, and I've been struck with it personally, between design estimates by designers, engineers, architects, landscape architects, and what the contractors are thinking. And so, we probably need to work on this at a state level, because here we are getting money from state agencies that that are giving money that's really kind of oriented towards where we were 2 or 3 years ago, not today, because they just keep rising. These construction costs just keep rising, and so I don't know how we do that, but I think we need to
Mayor?
Plan that into our thinking in the future.
Excellent point, Trustee Radnovich. Can I respond, Mayor?
Go ahead. I think the answer to that question is simple. State agencies are elephants. They move very, very slowly. And so they're only going to give you the money you ask for. So you're going to have to ask for more money, because it's going to cost 50% more. I mean, that's a bottom line. That's going to be my approach anyway.
And if I could just add that Maria and I just had a really great meeting, and actually the mayor was also present when the new Secretary of Transportation came by and looked at some of our projects. And the state is looking at gap funding for communities that where
it's just not working anymore. Yeah.
Right. The quote came in here, that now it's up here, and where do we come up with the funding? And they too, they don't want to see these projects half finished. They want to make communities whole, and there's money to go around. So they have funding to do this kind of gap funding.
Good, that's great. I wasn't aware of that. That's awesome. And you're probably glad to hear that was my last comment of the night.
Okay. I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I need a second.
Go ahead.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.